Chapter 1710. Lin Yuan looked at his fist that had been bitten by the nether bamboo viper and shook his fist without a care. Lin Yuan sighed in his heart. It was a Diamond X/Fantasy V Serene Bamboo Viper. As expected of the Freedom Federation's top youths who had poured their entire lives of resources into nurturing this spirit creature. It was completely different from ordinary Diamond X/Fantasy V phase. Otherwise, when he used Xiao Hei's exclusive skill Spirit Purity Burst, with 80% of his strength he would not be able to survive. It was impossible for the Serene Bamboo Viper to still move. It had to be known that Lin Yuan now possessed Spirit Qi. Due to the constant evolution of the Spirit Lock spatial zone, it had become purer. The power of the spiritual essence explosion had also increased quite a bit compared to the time at the Great Night Assembly. He was now using 80% of his power to fight a Diamond X/Fantasy V Fae that had been nurtured using ordinary methods. Even if he didn't hammer the Fae to death, it wouldn't be able to move. His first clash with the purple-haired youth had made him realize that he was not as powerful as the purple-haired youth. This purple-haired youth that Lin hadn't given him any information on was a hidden trump card of the Freedom Federation. Since that was the case, that white-haired youth who also had no information on him should also be the Freedom Federation's hidden card. In this way Qianyu, Kaihua, Yanling and Yu Changjian who could interact with sacred source life forms. Together with the white-haired youth, the five of them formed the best team. At that thought Lin Yuan's heart sank. He knew that in the general execution battle if possible, he had to try his best not to reveal his trump card. Save as many trump cards as possible for the team to use. Lin Yuan had previously asked the princess to store the Pinnacle Myth 2 Vicious Venom Law. Now the Vicious Poison Law had been raised to Myth 3. In addition he had recently absorbed a few world crystals. Coincidentally there was a poison-type world crystal among them. Therefore he was no longer afraid of any poison phase below Myth 2. Based on the abilities that the princess had given him, Lin Yuan was now truly immune to poison. Logically speaking, once one was poisoned the wound would quickly swell. A dreamy blue liquid flowed out of Lin Yuan's injured fist. The liquid happened to be the poison that the nether bamboo viper had injected into Lin Yuan's body. As the life force in his body surged, the wound healed naturally. The transformation of the black palm shocked the Star Web viewers once again. At the same time, the ones who were stunned the longest were the veteran forces and the top forces. He had also recovered from the extreme shock. Logically speaking, the disciples of the veteran forces and the top forces were very knowledgeable, and it was very difficult for them to encounter anything that could surprise them. However, what he saw was too shocking. During the battle between the Moon Empress disciple Lin Yuan and Chef Supreme's disciple, Zhongzhe in the Great Night Assembly, Lin Yuan's punch was so similar. This kind of ability to rely on the physical body to launch such a powerful attack. There wouldn't be a second person in the entire Radiance Federation. As a result, the audience members who came from veteran and top forces were shocked. He already knew Black's true identity. It was just that no one dared to divulge this information. After Han Qi learned that Black had used some unknown method to become immune to the poison of the Serene Bamboo Viper, suddenly he noticed a faint yellow smoke rising from the beheading general's battle arena. The general's battle arena was completely made of white jade. How could there be dust on the white jade shop? Han Qi suddenly thought of Black sand-type source-type life form. Thinking of this, Han Qi waved his hand. A 1,000-meter-long giant snake appeared out of thin air in the arena. After this giant snake appeared, it immediately coiled its body and stood up. It protected Han Qi in the middle of the snake's body. At that moment, 3 streams of quicksand drilled through the white jade shop on the general's battle arena. They each grabbed the feet of the 2 independent 100 sequence members, as well as the seriously injured Serene Bamboo Viper. With this flow of sand as the center, 3 yellow sand vortexes formed. The yellow sand constantly surged, clearly wanting to pull the 2 independent 100 sequence members and the Serene Bamboo Viper into the sea of sand. Everyone knew very well that once they were pulled into the sea of sand, what would be the outcome? These 2 independent 100 sequence members had already summoned their main phase. They wished they could use all kinds of means. However, the strongest main phase of these 2 independent 100 sequence members was only Diamond 2/Fantasy 3. Such strength was nurtured with the best method, and it was a Diamond X/Fantasy V source sand. It simply had no ability to resist. It was understandable that Han Qi didn't protect these 2 independent 100 sequence members. however, if he remained indifferent when the two of them were in danger. After the two of them were killed, the first general battle arena would be considered the Radiance's side's victory. Therefore Han Chi had to save these two independent 100 sequence members. Han Chi yelled angrily. Floating Earth Serpent, use exclusive skill Earth Vein Control. Upon hearing Han Chi's instructions, the 1,000-meter-long giant serpent, which was originally coiled up, suddenly let out a roar. A noble aura emitted from this serpent's body. This noble aura caused Lin Yuan's expression to change abruptly. Just like butterfly species phase, they had 3 supreme bloodlines. These butterfly species phase with the 3 supreme bloodlines had an extremely strong suppression on other butterfly species phase. Among the snake phase there were also 7 supreme bloodlines. These 7 supreme bloodlines could be considered 7 kinds of branches. For example, his master, the Moon Empress, had 2 soaring serpents, 1 green and 1 white. They were one of the 7 snake phase bloodlines. The feathered serpent bloodline was formed after the bloodline had evolved again. At present, the purple-haired youth called the Floating Earth Serpent belonged to the Bright Serpent bloodline. The Bright Serpent could be proficient in one attribute and use it to the extreme. The Floating Earth Serpent was obviously a snake species fae that controlled the earth. After the Floating Earth Serpent used its exclusive skill Earth Vein Control. Indeed, Lin Yuan found that the source sand's movements were blocked. It even lost the ability to continue producing sand in the earth. This was because the Floating Earth Serpent seemed to have become the center of the earth. With its bloodline as the center, it controlled the earth elements underground. However, Han Chi had made a mistake. The source sand could not only produce sand in the earth, but it could also produce close guard sand by consuming spiritual power. Sensing that Han Chi wanted to summon the heavily injured dark bamboo viper back, Lin Yuan sneered. The corners of his mouth under the silver mask hooked up into a sneer. Lin Yuan immediately ordered the source sand. He let the source sand use its exclusive skill Metal Consume Manifestation to extract the red lotus soft gold, which had not been used much in battle. Immediately after, the yellow sand that had originally entangled the dark bamboo viper suddenly turned into red crystal threads. The moment these crystal threads attached to the dark bamboo viper, the dark bamboo viper let out a mournful wail. In fact, after seeing that the dark bamboo viper had such a fast speed, Lin Yuan became greedy for the dark bamboo viper. He was now ready to implement his plan. 7017K. Chapter 1711. Ever since his source sand had been upgraded to Diamond X/Fantasy V, the source sand had become much stronger. The exclusive skill Sand Spirit Acceptance was getting stronger and stronger. However, there were no phase or dimensional life forms suitable for spirit acceptance. His exclusive skill Sand Spirit Acceptance was still empty. This caused the source sand, which didn't have any skills and only had 2 exclusive skills, to have half of its abilities sealed. However, there was nothing he could do. It was the alien insect, the heart-penetrating iron line, that Lin Yuan had been using to accept the spirit sand. However, the heart-penetrating iron line had already been perfectly replaced by the crystalline threads of the red lotus soft gold that the source sand had devoured through Metal Consume Manifestation. He finally found a fae suitable for the source sand's grain spirit acceptance. It was the purple-haired youth's Diamond X/Fantasy V Serene Bamboo Viper. Firstly, the speed of the Serene Bamboo Viper was fast. Secondly, the Serene Bamboo Viper was extremely poisonous. The Nether Bamboo Viper's venom was harmless to him. However, the Nether Bamboo Viper's venom was enough to kill any fae of the same grade. In fact, he could even face suzerain/mythi faes that were stronger than him. As long as the Serene Bamboo Viper pierced the other party's body, it would be able to put the other party to death. He admired the Serene Bamboo Viper's 3 abilities and 1 exclusive skill very much. Snake Body Wind Transformation allows the user to merge their body with the wind, increasing their speed while also concealing themselves. The armor-piercing venomous fangs gave the Serene Bamboo Viper's fangs a certain armor-piercing effect. Although the bite force of the Serene Bamboo Viper was not very strong, it was unable to cause damage to the target through the snake's mouth. However, it could only press its snake-like mouth on the target's skin and armor. The snake's teeth could pierce through the target's defense and spray venom into the target's body. The third skill, Puppet Control, used poison to control the opponent's mind. Moreover, it could continuously inject poison into the target's body, constantly controlling the target. This kind of ability was not very effective in the arena battles. But in a real battle in the wild, as long as this ability bit anyone on the enemy's side, they would be killed. In a situation where the enemy did not understand the effects of the snake venom, it was equivalent to burying a spy in the enemy's team who would listen to him 100%. As for the nether bamboo viper's exclusive skill, it was all snake species phase that used poison as their main method. It was the exclusive skill that everyone dreamed of. Poison spread. Objects infected by the toxin would become the host of the toxin. It could spread the poison through the infected body and infect other targets. Snake species phase had a characteristic, and that was venom. As a single target attack, snake species phase were usually more venomous. Snake phase that spat out poisonous mist to attack in groups were less toxic. Right now, the serene bamboo viper was able to use its exclusive skill, poison spread. It could turn a single poison attack into an AoE attack in another way. Under normal circumstances, snake venom was not contagious after infecting an object. This was common sense. In a real life and death battle, the enemy could easily be infected by the venom of the serene bamboo viper while taking care of their teammates. In addition, the serene bamboo viper's skill, puppet control. In other words, he could control the effects of the entire team by injecting poison into one person. With such abilities and exclusive skills, the serene bamboo viper could be considered a fae with great strategic significance. However, if such a fae was used in the arena battle, it would be extremely difficult. It was truly overkill. When Han Chi discovered that he had ordered the floating world's bright serpent to use its exclusive skill, Earth Vein Control, the floating world's bright serpent was stunned. It had indeed seized control of most of the sand grains in the land. However, there was still a small portion of the sand that it could not control. It immediately knew that these sand grains that it could not control were the main body of that sand-type source-type life form. The source sand's main body was currently attacking the two independent 100 sequence members in the arena. Looking at the two liberal 100 sequence members who were exhausted from defending, yet unable to put up any resistance under the attacks, Lin Fan felt a chill run down his spine. He could not help but be furious. Black had used an artifact to take away the two Radiance 100 sequence members. Those two Radiance 100 sequence members were still alive. Therefore, even if Black was the only one in the arena, it would not be considered a loss. However, if the two Liberal 100 sequence members on his side were to die, he would lose the first round of the general execution battle. Han Chi clearly wanted to preserve his spiritual power as much as possible. However, he had no choice but to consume his spiritual power to protect these two burdens. Han Chi yelled angrily. Before the floating earth snake, do you really think that you can rely on a sand-type elemental source-type life form to do whatever you want? In front of the floating earth snake, no matter what earth-type mutant you are, you have to submit to the floating earth snake's control. While speaking, Han Chi circulated the spiritual power in his body. The floating earth snake, which was circling in front of Han Chi, raised its head and hissed again. The entire land could not help but tremble. The entire land seemed to be reset by some kind of mighty force. The entire White Jade shop's general execution stage had been smashed into pieces. The 200-meter deep coating was reversed and stirred. At this moment, Lin Yuan's source sand formed the sand guards. They were evenly distributed in a space of 5,000 square meters and 200 meters underground. The attack that Han Chi had made the floating earth snake unleash could be said to be a fundamental restraint on the source sand. Han Chi stood on the floating earth snake's body and looked down at Lin Yuan. It was as if he was mocking Lin Yuan's incompetence. Right at this moment, Han Chi heard a light, pleasant and cold voice ring out. It's true that you protected two independent 100 sequence members, but do you not care about your fae? Han Chi had previously discovered that he could not use the contract to keep the dark bamboo viper in his spiritual spatial zone. In order to save the two independent 100 sequence members, Han Chi did not have time to care about the dark bamboo viper situation. Upon hearing Black's words, Han Chi hurriedly looked at the dark bamboo viper. Han Chi saw that the dark bamboo viper had been wrapped into a cocoon by the red crystal silk. The dark bamboo viper was in extreme mental pain. Han Chi immediately recognized the red crystal thread. What it was? Red lotus soft gold. How could there be red lotus soft gold? After a brief shock, Han Chi was about to summon a new fae to destroy the cocoon formed by the red lotus soft gold. At that moment, several chainswords shot out from the ground. These chainswords actually formed a huge black box through their own free assembly. The dark bamboo viper, which was wrapped by the red lotus soft gold, was sealed in this black box. At that moment, over a dozen black diamond-shaped objects suddenly flew out from the ground and landed on this black box. There was a violent explosion. The explosion at such a close distance only left a small dent on the black box. Back then, Hu Quan had used the radium-uranium steel to make the training room walls for the Myth 2 Mother of Bloodbath and the Myth 3 Endless Summer. 7017K. Chapter 1712. As long as Myth Breed Phase paid attention, there was no problem at all in making a move in a house made of radium-uranium steel. Those diamond-shaped objects just now could blast a dent on the surface of radium-uranium steel. It was enough to prove the power of those attacks. After the Earth was reset, the source sand had really lost control of the surrounding environment. At that moment, the near-guard sand formed a vortex again. It swallowed the black box made of chain swords into the vortex. Then a suppressed snake cry echoed in the quicksand vortex. Han Chi knelt on one knee on the floating earth snake's body. It was as if something in his mind had shattered, and his spiritual energy was in unbearable pain. As for Han Chi, the fetters between him and the dark bamboo viper had completely disappeared. Phase could be said to be the lifeblood of a spirit chi professional. The dark bamboo viper's death immediately made Han Chi go crazy. At that moment, Lin Yuan was using Morbius True Data to investigate the huge snake that Han Chi had summoned called the Floating Earth Snake. Fey name: Floating Earth Snake, Fey species. Ancient Giant Snake / Bright Snake, Fey grade. Diamond 10 out of 10. Fey type: Earth, Fey quality. Fantasy V abilities: Frowny Face Drill Explosion. Compress the soil and sand in the earth to form an earth drill and then detonate it to deal damage to targets within the range. Snake's Pride. When attacked in a seriously injured state or suffering from negative effects or curses, one can cut off the snake's vitality to reduce one's size and heal injuries. Sand Flow Wild Attraction. By devouring the sand flow and absorbing the earth attribute energy in the sand flow, one can increase one's strength for a short time and build a layer of sand-like armor on the surface of one's body. Snake Queen's Guard. Expel 3 snake eggs that are being nurtured in the abdomen. These 3 snake eggs can absorb earth element energy and hatch into snake guards with the bright snake bloodline and have the same combat power as the main body. Earth Reset. In an instant, all of the power within the earth is gathered together, and then evenly distributed across a certain area of land. During this process, any power that one can control can be extracted and added to oneself. Bright Snake God. Burn one's own bloodline, sacrifice one's own flesh, and under the premise of burning the false nucleus, one can temporarily break through to the next level. If the contestant is willing to sacrifice himself, one can break through to the next level. Exclusive skill: Frowny Face Earth Vein Control. Injecting one's bloodline into the earth, transforming the earth vein underground into a snake vein. The snake vein has a stronger defense than the user and it can always be controlled by the user. Snake World Floating. Opens up a gate to the snake world and draws in a large number of earth attribute wild snakes. While the main body is protecting an object, the main body can share its power with these wild snakes. Lin Yuan's face behind the mask revealed a surprised expression. Lin Yuan simply did not know what to say about this earthly bright snake. In a way, it was the strongest defense-type fantasy breed Fey that Lin Yuan had ever seen. Moreover, this kind of defense also had extremely strong offensive power. The earth had just turned over, and the source sand had been banished to various places in this land. It must have been the earthly bright snake that had used its platinum ability, Earth Reset. The one that had just blasted a groove on the radium-uranium steel surface. It was the normal ability Drill Explosion. In Lin Yuan's opinion, this earthly bright snake's second exclusive skill, Snake World Descent, was very compatible with the Class 5 artifact in Han Chi's hand, the Demon Lizard Fong Blade. Each of the wild snakes that appeared in the gate to the snake world could be used as Han Chi's weapon and supply. The most powerful deterrent was the earthly bright snake's diamond ability, Bright Snake God. The bright snake divine connection allowed the bright snake of the floating world to burn its own bloodline and sacrifice its body. Could let its strength break through to the next level. If Han Chi was willing to sacrifice himself, it could let the earthly bright snake break through to the next grade. The double breakthrough could let the earthly bright snake's strength be comparable to that of a Myth 2 Fey in a short time. Such strength had already reached the level of the current Radiance Envoy. After Lin Yuan thoroughly saw the earthly bright snake's data, He did not have any fear. This was because he had used his sacred source life form, the sacred sword-wielding queen. When using the sword skills in the sacred sword state, he could also achieve such strength. Moreover, Lin Yuan's sacred source life form, the sacred sword-wielding queen, had now broken through to class 4. It had obtained a new function. In the queen state, the function still had a support and defensive effect. However, in the sacred sword state there was already a stronger killer move. However, Lin Yuan did not have the slightest fear of the earthly bright snake. This did not mean that the Chef Supreme, the Bamboo Monarch, the Moon Empress, or the other Class 4 creation masters were afraid. After understanding the earthly bright snake situation, there was no anxiety or worry on his face. Apart from the Moon Empress, the others did not understand Lin Yuan. Based on common sense, no matter how strong Lin Yuan was, he would not go head-on against a Myth 2 Fae. It had to be known that going head-on against a Myth 2 Fae and being able to hit with the same strength as a Myth 2 Fae were two completely different things. A Myth 2 attack would only take an instant. Every movement of a Myth 2 Fae had the powerful might of a Myth 2 Fae. During the Psi meeting, Lin Yuan had indeed used the sacred source life form to hit with power comparable to a Myth breed Fae. However, the earthly bright snake was one of the 7 supreme snake bloodlines. After its strength reached Myth 2, it would undoubtedly be able to fight above its grade again. Now it seemed that Lin Yuan had made Han Qi lose a Fae and had the upper hand. According to the rules of the general slaying battle, one of the two sides must die in this duel. In other words, if Lin Yuan wanted to win and kill Han Qi, he had to face both Han Qi and the earthly bright snake sacrifice. Even an Emperor-class expert with a Myth 2 Fae would go crazy after Han Qi and the earthly bright snake sacrifice. He might also be dragged down with him. The Freedom Federation's concern for Lin Yuan was different. Upon seeing Han Qi's Fae, the nether bamboo viper died. Yan Ling, Kai Hua Yu Chongjian and even Qian Yu wore faint smiles on their faces. Only the white-haired boy, Lu O, frowned and was truly concerned about Han Qi. The enraged Han Qi raised his hand. Once again he summoned a big fellow. This big fellow had a pair of huge wings on its back. As this huge fellow hissed, the sky turned completely dark. Thunder rumbled. After seeing this big fellow's true data, Lin Yuan also waved his hand. In the blink of an eye, millions of golden birds surged out from Lin Yuan's raised palm. In an instant the golden birds were centered around Lin Yuan. It formed a grand scene of 100 birds paying homage. At that moment 2 or 3 pipa strings sounded as though they came from beyond the sky. 7017K. Chapter 1713. When Lin Yuan saw this snake species flying Fae with huge golden wings, his eyes lit up. He didn't need to use Morbius true data to investigate. He knew that this snake Fae must have the feathered serpent bloodline, one of the 7 supreme bloodlines of snakes. Compared to the soaring serpent bloodline that his master, the Moon Empress, and the pure and white snakes that pulled the carriage, this feathered serpent bloodline was still very weak. Even so, this snake Fae's feathered serpent bloodline had almost reached the limit of a snake-type fantasy breed Fae. This giant snake was about 500 meters long, and its entire body was a brilliant golden blue. The golden and blue snake scales seemed to contain 2 kinds of power. On the dark golden snake eyes, there was a wing-like eyelid excrescence. The excrescence was hard and had a very strong sense of horniness. It gave this snake Fae a majestic and sacred aura out of nowhere. This feathered serpent's tail was raised high, and it had the obvious characteristics of a rattlesnake. Its specialized tail tip was nearly 5 meters long. Every time the tail tip shook, a small snake that turned into a musical note would overflow from the tail tip and drill into the snake Fae's head. It was as if it was drilling into the clouds. The giant snake flapped its wings and soared into the sky. Its body shuttled through the clouds, which became thicker and thicker. Heavy rain poured down in an instant. It drenched the 2 independent 100 sequence members and Lin Yuan. Lin Yuan's hair and clothes were wet in the rain. The rain that fell on the silver mask slid down the streamlined end of the mask. It made black look like a noble strolling in the rain. Under the rain, it didn't look the slightest bit disheveled. However, the 2 independent 100 sequence members seemed to have suffered an invisible attack. They were all squatting on the ground, hugging their heads and trembling violently. It was as if they were suffering some kind of pain. It was the same for the Fae summoned by the 2 independent 100 sequence members. That platinum/fantasy breed flood dragon Fae was in pain. At this moment he was in so much pain that he felt like a maggot and he was struggling on the ground. The white jade ground had been destroyed. The rain had wet the ground, making it abnormally muddy. This silver-white flood dragon Fae seemed to have become an earth-drilling loach. Its body was covered in mud and looked very disheveled. It was as if he had lost half his life after being drenched by the rain. Lin Yuan also sensed that this rain could launch a mental attack. Firstly, Genius strength had already been raised to Diamond X/Fantasy V. Although Genius wasn't a snake species Fae, its bloodline had evolved along the way. To some extent, the intelligence of the heavenly knowing destiny beast had evolved. It was more noble than any Fae and bloodline that Lin Yuan knew of. It was even taller than the managing phoenix New Sun Sparrow, which had devoured Chinese phoenix bloodline and evolved into a sun independently. Genius represented the 100 Questions beast race. After obtaining pure spirit chi, they would be qualified to walk on the path of a creation master. The path of a creation master was the standard to assist in the evolution of myriad spirits. A Fae's innate talent possessed such an ability. Compared to the heavenly spirits, such a spiritual being was more worthy of being called the favored child of heaven and earth. Genius, which had advanced to Diamond X/Fantasy V, had no boundaries in its spirit sea. It could definitely target a peak myth 2 spiritual type Fae. Therefore, under this drizzle that was harmful to one's mind. Through Genius spiritual expansion, Lin Yuan was able to avoid the damage. Secondly, Lin Yuan had previously used the silver stamen gold luster cache's nectar to wash away the impurities in his body. After the silver stamen gold luster cache's strength had broken through, he had used the silver stamen gold luster cache's nectar to wash away the impurities in his soul. After consuming the geocentric immortal milk, Lin Yuan's genetic model had undergone an unknown evolution. To a certain extent, Lin Yuan could no longer be treated as a normal spirit chi professional. The process of washing away the impurities 3 times was more painful each time. Especially when he used the geocentric immortal milk for the 3rd time, Lin Yuan experienced that every cell was torn apart and reconstructed. The pain repeated tens of thousands of times. This pain affected the soul, mind and body. Therefore, without Genius spiritual expansion, Lin Yuan could still resist under such a torrential rain. Even with Lin Yuan's mind, there would still be a huge burden. However, he would never be like the 2 independent 100 sequence members, who held their heads and collapsed on the ground. There was no room for resistance at all. That giant snake with golden wings and golden blue scales. It continued to wander among the dark clouds. At that moment the audience was appalled to discover something. The dark clouds in the sky had unknowingly gathered into an ink-blue sky river. Golden spirit snakes swam in the ink-blue sky river. As these spirit snakes swam, there was a strange sound. This sound seemed to contain some kind of power. However, it was not released. Seeing Lin Yuan in the rain, there was no change. Han Qi, who was in a frenzy, pursed his lips tightly. Han Qi did not expect such a situation to occur. His main Fae had summoned a curtain of rain. To other spirit chi professionals, it had always been a great killing weapon. Han Qi thought in his heart. Could it be that Black has a spiritual type defense type Fae? Han Qi, who was speculating about Black, did not know that his other main Fae was brewing the sky river in the sky. His opponent, Black, had already checked his Fae's true data clearly. Fae name: Fanyu Guanyin Snake, Fae species, Feathered Serpent/Sound Serpent, Fae grade, Diamond 10 out of 10. Fae type: Sound/Water, Fae quality, Fantasy V abilities: Frowny Face, Bell Tail. When the tail is swung, the sound can turn into a spirit snake and attack the designated target indiscriminately. After hitting the target, a snake-shaped mark will be formed on the target's body. Every 10 snake-shaped marks will trigger a sonic boom effect. Feather shadow protection: when the wings extend out a light shadow, it can protect itself or other targets. When the light shadow is damaged, the feathers can be consumed to increase the light shadow's strength. Sacrificial prayer snake voice: when attacking a target that is suffering a spiritual attack, each attack will sacrifice a certain amount of the target's vitality, spiritual power, spiritual energy and soul power. The sacrificed power will be injected into the designated target's body. Guanyin weeping: the killing heart Guanyin statue weeps and forms a range of rain curtain. The snake-shaped musical notes can freely appear in the rain curtain or be condensed by the rain curtain. At the same time, the weeping guanyin statue will spew out snake-shaped musical notes with double the attack power. Feathered serpent connection. By burning one's own bloodline and sacrificing one's body, one will protect a target under the premise of burning the false core. No matter what the target sacrifices, the sacrificial effect will be endured by the body. Sanskrit Heavenly Temple. Temporarily give up the feathered serpent bloodline and activate the sound serpent bloodline to the extreme. Through the snake-shaped musical notes, the Killing Heart Guanyin will sit in the Heavenly Temple. From then on, the Killing Heart Guanyin's hand will turn into a staff made of snake-shaped musical notes and attack the target. Exclusive skill Frowny Face Killing Heart Guanyin. Through the snake-shaped musical notes, a guanyin statue will be formed behind the user. The snake-shaped musical notes emitted from the guanyin pure bottle will be twice as strong as the original snake-shaped musical notes. Torrential Milky Way. Condense dark clouds in the sky and the dark clouds will accumulate rain to form a Milky Way hanging in the sky. The Milky Way will gather water elements and be able to replenish the user's water element energy at any time and form a rain curtain with extreme spiritual attack power. The raindrops can put the opponent's spirit in extreme pain. 7017K. Chapter 1714. Through the feedback from True Data Lin Yuan Yu. The anomaly in the sky was formed by the Fan Yu Guanyin snake executing its second exclusive skill, Torrential Milky Way. As for the little golden snakes swaying in the Milky Way, they were the Fan Yu Guanyin snakes that were executing their spirit tail technique. If one were to say that the Yukio earth snake summoned by Han Chi could perfectly restrain his source sand, the Fan Yu Guanyin snake, which was also a sound-type Fey like Chime, happened to be restrained by Chime. The Milky Way blocked out the sun. The sky darkened in front of Chime. It was no different from covering the bonfire with a black cloth. Even though the heavenly river was thick and heavy, it was still formed by dark clouds. 100 layers of black cloth stacked on top of the bonfire could still be easily burned through by the bonfire. Han Chi stood on the body of the world bright serpent under the heavenly river. He was like a king surrounded by thousands of snakes. Han Chi said angrily, "Black, you killed one of my main Fays and destroyed my talent. I want you dead. Bright snake of the world. Snake world emerges. Fan Yu Guanyin snake, use your guanyin weeping tears. Kill this guy in front of me." As soon as Han Chi finished speaking, the Yukio earth snake's tail suddenly stabbed into the ground. A large number of dark red snake patterns appeared on the snake's body. These snake patterns swam in the air. In the end, a huge snake gate was formed behind the Yukio earth snake. Snake patterns swam on the snake gate, bringing with it a damp, fishy and sinister aura. Suddenly the huge stone door cracked open. A large number of 3 to 4 meters long dark brown snakes swarmed out from the snake door. Han Chi wielded the 5-star artifact, the demon lizard tooth blade, and chopped down 5 to 6 wild snakes. The spiritual power that he had consumed was instantly replenished to a full state. In the sky, Fan Yu stabbed the tail of the guanyin snake into the heavenly river. The snake tail shook rapidly, stirring up a huge whirlpool in the heavenly river. With the vortex as the center, a large number of spirit snakes formed by golden musical notes were released toward the heavenly river. Furthermore, the spirit snakes formed by the golden musical notes were much thicker than before. The rain was even heavier than before. Golden spirit snake notes flickered in the rain from time to time. It was as if the spiritual snake musical notes in the heavenly river could appear anywhere in the rain. Right at this moment, Han Chi heard the voice that he abnormally loathed ring out. "I remember your Freedom Federation saying that this is just a friendly match. I killed one of your main Fays because it's inevitable to make mistakes in battle. I don't think you don't understand such a simple logic." Lin Yuan's words made Han Chi's teeth suddenly clench together. It made a creaking sound. This was the pretext that the Freedom Federation had prepared for this friendly battle long ago. Now, before he even had the chance to use it, someone else had used it on him. In Han Chi's opinion, this was truly a form of mockery. Seeing that Black didn't summon any other Fays, Black nodded. Meanwhile, the curtain of rain formed by Guanyin's weeping tears had already reached Black. Han Chi sneered and shouted, "I understand. But I hope you can understand." Han Chi's voice had just faded when he heard that cold voice full of mockery. "You can't be thinking that with the ability that you've displayed now, you can determine victory, right? Chime, the sky has been overcast for too long. It's time to see the sun." Lin Yuan's voice had just faded when the golden birds circling around Lin Yuan's body instantly took him as the origin. Out of nowhere they increased by dozens of times. If it was previously a grand scene of 100 birds bowing to the ancestor, then it had now become 10,000 birds bowing to the ancestor. Among the tens of thousands of golden birds, there was a golden phoenix with a body length of 10 meters in every 1,000 golden birds. These 10 phoenixes constantly led the flock to circle around. It was as if they were looking forward to the arrival of their king. The pipa strings that had originally only sounded out 2 or 3 times immediately fluctuated. The sweet-sounding pipa sound seemed to make the heavy rain in the sky pause. In the rain, the musical notes turned into little golden snakes. All of them were picked up by the flying birds. Then they were pecked into pieces by a few flying birds at the same time. At this moment, in the sky above Lin Yuan's head, a young girl's clear shout came. Immediately after, 10,000 birds bowed. The golden birds condensed into a 3-stringed pipa that seemed to contain a new sun. This pipa's neck looked like a phoenix's neck. At this moment, the phoenix's neck was being gently pinched by a pair of hands. A young girl's shadow appeared in midair. This young girl's beauty was simply indescribable. The heavens seemed to favor this young girl's facial features. If an ordinary person was only sculpted 1,000 times, this young girl's facial features were definitely sculpted 10,000 times. This young girl was elegant and gentle with vitality and charm. Her appearance was not inferior to even the Moon Empress and Lian Shen. However, at this moment, the members of the 100 Sequence and the Star Web audience were not surprised by this young girl's beauty. Instead, this young girl was simply carved from the same mold as the sparrow-voiced lowly goddess who had live-streamed on the Star Web previously. Back then, the sparrow-voiced lowly goddess looked far less like a Valkyrie than the current young girl. At that time, the sparrow-voiced lowly goddess looked like a pretty daughter from a humble family. Previously, the sparrow-voiced lowly goddess had appeared in the live-streaming room with a blue-gold bird. That bird was Black's Fae at that time. This made everyone speculate that the sparrow-voiced lowly goddess should have a close relationship with Black. Otherwise, it was impossible for Black's Fae to be placed with the sparrow-voiced lowly goddess. But now everything seemed to be self-evident. The sparrow-voiced lowly goddess should have been transformed from Black's bird Fae on the execution platform. Bai Hao looked at the woman's shadow in midair, who was holding a pipa with a phoenix neck and was surrounded by hundreds of birds. He was instantly stunned. For a moment he could not help but have a myriad of thoughts. No one knew what Bai Hao was thinking at this moment. However, Wang Fan, who was standing beside Bai Hao, noticed that Bai Hao's teeth were tightly biting his lower lip. This was something that Bai Hao would only do when he was extremely nervous and worried. Bai Hao should be very worried about the safety of Black's bird Fae. The current Chimey did not give the audience time to be surprised by its appearance and identity. Everyone saw the woman's shadow raise her hand and point at the sky. In an instant, the sun that was covered by the Milky Way bloomed with radiance. This radiance pierced through the Milky Way mercilessly. In less than a minute, it completely evaporated the Milky Way and the rain curtain. It was just like the Milky Way and the rain curtain as well as the spirit snake shuttling through the rain curtain. It was as if they had never appeared. Before Han Chi could react, the young girl's pleasant voice rang out again. Immediately after, under everyone's astonished gaze, everyone saw that the sun in the phoenix neck pipa had actually flown out of the pipa itself. It gradually rose in this world. 7017K. Chapter 1715. The sun that flew out of the pipa constantly radiated golden light. The sun slowly hovered in midair and resonated with the sun in the sky. It was as though this sun was created by Chimey's ability and could borrow the power of the sun in the sky. Han Chi wouldn't believe such a situation even if he was beaten to death. If there was really a Fae that could create a sun by itself, wouldn't this Fae be even more powerful than a favored spirit? The sun that Chimey had just risen looked too small. The Moon Empress, Chef Supreme, Bamboo Monarch and the Pity God. Although they noticed that this sun was a little special, they didn't pay too much attention. Instead they mainly focused on Chimey itself. However, Xue Shuo, who was hiding in Lin Yuan's hair, felt his heart tremble for no reason. As a favored spirit that belonged to the sun, Xue Shuo could be said to be the most sensitive to the sun. The Moon Empress might be a Class 6 creation master now. Even her perception of the sun couldn't compare to Xue Shuo. Xue Shuo felt a kind of power that had the same origin as the main world's sun. This discovery made Shuo look at Chime in horror. It was no longer a question of whether he believed it or not. Right now it was no longer a question of whether they believed him or not. After the sun rose into the sky, it immediately used Phoenix Seed voice transmission. Chime had fused the soul seed that it had refined from the Phoenix phase soul into the sound birds. Chime had fused the soul seed that it had refined from the Phoenix species phase soul into the sound bird's body. Immediately after, these phoenixes flapped their wings and welcomed the floating earth snake. Through the exclusive skill Snake World Floating, a total of 18 golden phoenixes were singing in front of Chime. Then these phoenixes flapped their wings and welcomed the floating earth snake. Each of the golden phoenixes transformed from musical notes was surrounded by hundreds and thousands of sound birds. These flying birds were formed by Chime's ordinary ability Phoenix Cry. After each golden flying bird hit the target, it had an extremely powerful penetrating effect. At the same time, the target wasn't killed by the bird-shaped Phoenix Cry. It would intimidate and interfere with the target. When the flying birds were attacked or blocked, they would split into even more flying birds. The wild snakes that crawled out of the snake world door were tested by the golden flying birds. His strength was between the gold, platinum, and diamond levels. Seeing a large number of berserk snakes crawling out of the gate of the snake world being killed, Han Chi knew that he had to bring out some real ability. The Fan Yu Guanyin snake was obviously restrained by the spiritual creature that Black had summoned. Therefore, the best way to deal with this Fae was to control the floating earthly bright snake to attack. Han Chi immediately activated the second effect of Snake Realm Floating World. All of a sudden, a dark brown light burst forth from the earthly snake's body. Then the Yukio earth snake's body coiled up, petrified into a stone tablet. The power of the land snake of the floating world was distributed to each of the wild snakes. These wild snakes instantly changed from gold to diamond and platinum. They became gold fantasy breed, platinum fantasy breed, and diamond fantasy breed. This meant that his overall strength had risen to a whole new level. As a result, the golden birds were no longer able to effectively attack the snakes. Only the musical note phoenixes that were produced by Chime's Phoenix Seed induction skill were left behind. Only then would he be able to continue killing the berserk snake. Originally, the berserk snakes that came out of the snake world's door used physical attacks. At that moment, a large group of dark brown giant snakes with blood patterns squeezed out of the snake world's door with difficulty. As soon as these giant snakes appeared, they spewed out a large amount of poisonous fog and set off a sandstorm in the arena. At that moment, the sandstorm seemed to only be able to blind one's vision. However, the sand and dust were highly toxic and they could be blown onto flesh and blood. The sand was as sharp as a blade and it could easily grind away flesh. Chime rarely had the chance to help Lin Yuan fight. After its bloodline metamorphosis, it had never fought before. Now that its bloodline had evolved, it was the first time it had helped Lin Yuan fight and it was already being obstructed. Chime automatically cast its skill Fallen New Sunday. The sun that Chime had just risen suddenly descended and smashed on the general execution platform. It formed a huge area that was 200 square meters in size. The ground in this area seemed to have formed the surface of the sun. The sand that the giant snakes stirred up was unable to blow into the sun's area. It had already melted into magma. The new fallen sun allowed Chime to be immune to most physical and elemental damage. Chime used its exclusive skill Twin Sun Fetters to communicate with the sun in the sky. It started to sing and communicate with the sun in the sky. It borrowed a trace of energy from the main world's sun to replenish its consumption of the sun's area. After doing all of this, Chime cast the new sun body skill. The phantom formed by musical notes landed on the ground and stepped into the sun's area. The light-type musical notes that formed Chime's body instantly transformed into fire-type musical notes. Chime's aura suddenly changed. Lin Yuan knew that Chime had already transformed from the managing phoenix's new sun sparrow into the untamed Sanskrit sparrow. The golden birds that were originally flying in the sky instantly turned crimson. These crimson birds were like fire seeds. When they stuck onto the bodies of these wild snakes, they would immediately ignite. However, these fires wouldn't be extinguished. Soon enough, a monstrous fire burned within the snake horde. Even the few giant snakes that had squeezed out of the snake world's door with great difficulty were burned to ashes. Under the fire seeds, they were burned to ashes. Chime changed its attack. Han Chi didn't stop either. Han Chi controlled the floating earth snake and used its quicksand mad guide. By devouring a large amount of sand, its aura rose. It formed a thick layer of sand armor on its body. The floating earth snake, which was carrying out such a defense, didn't care that the flames had spread to its body. This was because this hollow layer of sand armor could effectively help the floating earth snake isolate the heat of the flames. The floating earth snake flicked its tail. In an instant, 3 snake eggs were expelled from the floating earth snake's body. These 3 snake gallbladders absorbed the earth-type energy under its feet. Soon enough, 3 snake men with 8 arms drilled out of the snake eggs. Each of these snake men held a weapon made of black crystals. These black crystals were very similar to the crystals that appeared when the floating earth snake used its drill explosion. The floating earth snake had hatched these 3 snake men according to its Queen's Guard skill. Every one of them had the aura of a Diamond X/Fantasy V. Just this skill alone allowed the floating earth snake to fight against 4 enemies. Although it wasn't as flexible as the Mother of Bloodbath's monster trainer's exclusive skill, External Blood Bone. However, the bright snake of the floating world was able to control the 3 snake guards through simple commands. The snake guards rushed toward Chime. 7017K. Chapter 1716. At that moment, the floating earth snake was constantly expanding the snake world's door. From time to time, more and more wild snakes drilled out. Most of the wild snakes that drilled out had area of effect elemental attacks. At that moment, Black raised its fist and faced the 3 Empress personal guards. It actually relied on a kind of combat technique and movement technique that Han Chi could not understand. It used its physical body to clash head-on with the 3 Empress personal guards. The wild snake's elemental attacks landed on Black's body. For some reason, Black was immune to the nether bamboo viper's venom. It was actually immune to the elemental attacks that could kill ordinary B-rank spirit chi professionals countless times. This made Han Chi very puzzled. At the same time, Han Chi understood. On the Freedom Federation side, apart from Kai Hua Yanling and Yu Chongjian, they had also set up a hidden trump card. It was definitely the same for the Radiance Federation. Black was the hidden trump card that the Radiance Federation had kept. Right now, Black's Fae that could control the Red Bird was present. His Sanskrit Guanyin snake was restrained. The Sanskrit Guanyin snake used its water attribute ability to face Black's Fae. For some reason it had lost its effectiveness. Han Chi did not want to activate his sacred source life form. He summoned the demon that he had spent so much effort to get from Du Miaomian. If he used all his trump cards in the first match of the general slaying battle, wouldn't he have no chance to kill the Radiance 100 sequence members? Previously he had promised Chen Yu that he would definitely kill all 3 Radiance 100 sequence members. At that thought, Han Chi issued a command to the Sanskrit Guanyin snake in the sky. Use the ability Sanskrit Temple and then use the exclusive skill Killing Heart Guanyin. When the Sanskrit Guanyin snake heard the command, it flapped its wings and let out a violent hiss. The snake tail swayed and left afterimages. A large number of golden snake patterns flew into the sky and outlined the outline of a temple. At that moment, a benevolent-looking Guanyin appeared in the temple. As the golden snake patterns increased, the Guanyin became more and more solid. The Guanyin suddenly opened its eyes, which contained endless killing intent. The 2 pure bottles in his hands had turned into a Buddhist staff at this time. The huge Guanyin swooped down from the sky. He raised his staff and smashed it at Chime. This strike could be said to be the Sanskrit Guanyin snake's all-out strike. It had already surpassed the limit of Diamond X/Fantasy V. At this time, Black seemed to be in a stalemate with the 3 snake guards. He was completely powerless to resist this Guanyin that descended from the sky. As for the crimson female phantom, she was constantly fighting against the berserk snake. It was obvious that he had used up more than half of his spiritual power. Lin Yuan was naturally aware of this situation. Each of Chime's attacks relied on its own consumption of spirit chi. As for Han Chi's floating world earth snake, its strength was almost the same as Chime. However, it could devour the yellow sand to recover the energy and spiritual energy it had consumed. He used his exclusive skill Snake World Floating and opened the door to the snake world. These wild snakes had crawled out of the snake world. No matter how much damage it suffered, it wouldn't affect the floating world earthly snake at all. If Chime went up, it would strike out its strongest attack. If Han Chi wanted to block it, he could only reveal more trump cards. However, in a stalemate, Chime was indeed not Han Chi's match. Lin Yuan didn't want to waste any more time. He didn't want to open the Spirit Qi imprint and Life imprint when fighting Han Qi. Therefore he had to end the battle quickly. Lin Yuan's plan wasn't so small that he had to fight a second match. He had to kill another independent 100 sequence member. Before the start of each general slaying battle, both sides could set the requirements again. If Han Qi requested, the Spirit Qi professionals in the battle were not allowed to leave the venue in any way. Lin Yuan wasn't confident that the floating world Earth Snake would use its bright snake divine connection. It had to protect the independent 100 sequence members on his side. Therefore Lin Yuan planned to end the general slaying battle in this battle. Lin Yuan ordered Genius in his heart. Genius, use Cat's Embrace. After Lin Yuan gave the order, the Star Web viewers suddenly realized something. Behind black, 8 dazzling, illusory tails suddenly appeared. Each of the 8 tails was nearly 100 meters long. These 8 tails intertwined with black and the snake guards in a stalemate. They faced the killing heart Guanyin in the sky that was holding the Buddhist staff. These cat tails were very similar to the spirit cat phantom's tail that appeared behind black during the duel with Lu Shuang. Black didn't summon a Fei and only used its Fei's ability. It looked like it was in a dilemma and had no choice but to parry. Everyone thought that the cat tails would break under the Buddhist staff. These cat tails that didn't seem to have much combat power directly sent the killing heart Guanyin flying. Moreover, these 8 cat tails didn't stop attacking after sending the killing heart Guanyin flying. These 8 cat tails bloomed in the air. It was like a white peony. In the middle of the peony, an attack brewed with spiritual energy was shot out. Genius's attack didn't belong to Genius itself. Genius used its Cat's Embrace ability to cluster a Fei called the Silver Crystal Feline. It used the Silver Crystal Feline's ability, the Spiritual Destruction Silver Bullet. For this attack, Genius used its own spiritual energy. With just one attack, it completely shattered the killing heart Guanyin. At that moment, Lin Yuan also released the spirit essence that was originally suppressed at 80% to 10%. After a few punches, half of the 8 arms of the snake guard which was caught off guard were broken. 2 of the independent 100 sequence candidates were kneeling on the ground, shivering. Even the top prodigies of the Freedom Federation. They weren't mentally prepared for the possibility of losing or dying. Now the strength that Black displayed. Let these 2 independent 100 sequence members know. Regardless of whether Han Qi could kill Black or not, he would definitely use the 2 of them as scapegoats before he died. Han Qi saw that the situation was already out of his control. He gritted his teeth and suddenly his eyes changed. The original white of his eyes turned black. His black eyeballs turned white and his vertical pupils turned white. In the vertical pupils, there was a depraved and oppressive purple light. The bones in Han Qi's tall and straight body suddenly made a violent sound. Han Qi's skin slowly turned grayish-black. A pair of long black horns appeared on his head. These horns were different from any other Fei's horns. These 2 horns spiraled upward. They were the unique long horns of the devil in the Devil Cathedral of the Freedom Federation. These 2 long horns proved that he was a middle-rank devil. Lin Yuan knew that Han Qi was now. He had finally used his trump card in a true sense. And the collision that would decide life and death was about to officially begin. 7017K. Chapter 1717. At present, Lin Yuan was also weighing his trump card. Currently he had the following phase. Genius, Chimey, Red Thorn, Source Sand, Ethereal Jellyfish, Jasmine Lily and Little Black. Purple Cloud, Soul Thought Whale. For example, Jean Say, Silver Splendor, or the Apostles Wendy and Lizard Ting. These Feis that were in dimensional spaces or other continents definitely couldn't be casually revealed. Lin Yuan did not mind revealing his trump card in this battle against the Freedom Federation's envoy. However, it did not mean that he had to bring those trump cards that were not helpful in battle to the table. For example, Red Thorn used its Tongue of Relinquish to control a few Overlord-class weapons. Or perhaps Bai Yen, who believed that he was the ruler and had submitted to him. These were the powers that Lin Yuan had mastered. But to others this kind of power seemed too much like an external force. The 2 majesties of the Freedom Federation would definitely not approve of his display of power. According to Xue Shuo, 2 pages of the Pagoda Canon had come to Huiyao. The strange plant seeds and plants that made Red Thorn's Tongue of Relinquish came from the Pagoda Canon. It was definitely not something simple. He did not want the Tower Cannon to target him. Among the Feis that he could use now, Genius, Chimey, Red Thorn, and the Source Sand were the only ones he could use. They had more or less been used. However, Red Thorn and Genius had only revealed a little of their strength. Lin Yuan had heard his master, the Moon Empress, mention the devils of the Freedom Federation. He had a certain level of understanding. He knew that the devil wasn't like the desolate bloodline phase that could be summoned. Instead, he would fuse with the contractor and demonize the contractor. Obtain the power of the devil. It was very similar to those fays that could fuse with their hosts. When he had first learned about demons, he had asked his master, the Moon Empress, what was the difference between a demon and a fae that could possess a contractor? Back then, the Moon Empress' answer was to fuse the fae with the contractor, and the contractor would still be the main one. On the other hand, when a devil possessed a contestant, the devil would be the dominant one. As he spoke, Lin Yuan could tell. His master, the Moon Empress, was rather fearful of creatures like devils. It was as though a spirit chi professional's strength would undergo a drastic change after being possessed by a devil. Lin Yuan was rather surprised that Han Qi could contract a middle-rank devil. The devils in the Devil Cathedral were the same as the Desolate Bloodline phase. There weren't many of them. The Desolate Bloodline spiritual item could only be given to His Highness Disciple and the Radiance Envoy. Members of the Radiant Light Knights could only be promoted if they had made great contributions. Only then would they be bestowed with a Desolate Bloodline spiritual object. The Freedom Federation had many people favored by His Majesty. Every single one of Her Majesty's caretakers had a single devil that was simply unrealistic. Only those of the younger generation who were favored by His Holiness and whose status was equivalent to His Holiness Hui Yao's disciples. Only then would he have the chance to be bestowed the devil. The fact that Han Qi could be bestowed with a devil was enough to show Han Qi's status. A devil was more precious than a sacred source life form. For example, during the Dimensional Conference, one could obtain an uncontracted sacred source life form as a reward. However, it was impossible for him to use a desolate bloodline fae as a reward. Hence, Han Qi must also have a sacred source life form. After measuring Han Qi's strength, Lin Yuan knew that Han Qi's strength was very strong. His sacred source life form, the sword-wielding queen. He definitely had to use it. While Han Qi was transforming into a devil, he was thinking about how to kill Lin Yuan. Lin Yuan was thinking about how to expose another fae. And when he did not use the sword-wielding queen's new ability, he would obtain victory in the general slaying battle. It could be said that after the previous few clashes, Lin Yuan, who had roughly figured out Han Qi's path, knew that the floating world Bright Snake had the Bright Snake divine ability. When Han Qi and the floating world Bright Snake both sacrificed themselves, he would be facing an opponent whose strength could reach Myth 2 in a short period of time. He still did not have the slightest fear or worry. He now had a total of 6 sword skills in the sacred sword state. If Lin Yuan was given another day, the 7th sword skill could also be formed. Among them, a few world crystals came from the Miao family. Miao Zhenshan had been killed by the Void Shadow Demon in the final Blood Oath Extreme battle. Back then, Lin Yuan had not chosen to make Miao Zhenshan into an Emperor-class weapon. First, it was because there was only one red tongue of relinquished tip left. Lin Yuan had to reserve this spot. He would leave it for more important targets. Second, Lin Yuan had his eyes on Miao Zhenshan's spiritual type main fae, the Golden Eerie Dreamweaver's World Crystal. He would then absorb this World Crystal, which had 8 creation earth veins and was one step away from forming an immortal body. Lin Yuan could already use this sword skill to hit the limit of a myth breed fae. If Lin Yuan was willing to use this attack, he would not be able to kill the floating world Bright Snake, which had reached myth 2 under the double sacrifice. He would definitely be able to touch the Freedom Envoy Qianyu. Since it was a sacred source life form, the sacred sword-wielding queen could no longer hide it. Lin Yuan raised his hand, and a holy sword with a gorgeous hilt and a simple blade appeared in his hand. This was the second time His Holiness Hui Yao Lu Jia Zhongzhe, and the others saw Lin Yuan use his own sacred source life form. However, this time Lin Yuan's back was not like when he had fought with Zhongzhe. A woman's phantom appeared behind him. This was probably because he was facing Han Qi. Lin Yuan did not need to activate the functions related to that woman's phantom. Zhongzhe, who had fought with Lin Yuan before, keenly noticed. Originally, only the tip of this sacred sword was engraved with fine totems. Now this sacred sword had an additional sword tassel. The sword tassel was very elegant, and when the wind blew, it brushed past Lin Yuan's wrist. This elegant sword tassel was woven with some strange method. This weaving method seemed to be doing its best to protect something hidden. Han Chi had been completely possessed by the devil. Han Chi's spirit chi clothes had been completely pierced by the bone horns that grew out from within his skin. To a certain extent, devils and the abyss-dimensional life forms, demons, had some similarities in appearance. However, demons' power tended to focus on the physical body. Devils, on the other hand, had the power to corrupt the soul and the mind. Han Chi's legs had already become 5 or 6 snake tails that rubbed against each other and constantly wrapped around each other. His hands were covered with a layer of grayish-purple scales. His fingertips had become even sharper and longer than the demon lizard Fong Blade's dagger. Han Chi's gray vertical pupils within the sclera of his black eyes were staring at him with exceptional calmness. Lin Yuan used Morbius True Data to investigate Han Chi. Lin Yuan was shocked to find that, since the devil was hidden in Han Chi's body, Morbius True Data did not have the ability to see through it. It was like inspecting a mother beast even if this mother beast was about to give birth. Morbius couldn't see through the void mother's stomach to see what was inside. Therefore Lin Yuan could not see this devil's attributes. Chapter 17-18. Since that was the case, Lin Yuan, who was holding the sacred sword, did not act immediately. Han Chi had already merged with the middle-rank devil that he had contracted. This devil had an appearance similar to a snake. It would definitely be a good match with Han Chi's snake phase. Han Chi would eventually have to use this ability. Lin Yuan planned to see what kind of ability this middle-rank devil had. Then he would decide which sword skill to use. Sword skills had different targets. If used according to the situation, it could often have unexpected effects. Han Chi's voice was obscure and harsh. However, if one listened carefully, it would sound abnormally pleasant. It was as if the devil was whispering in one's ear in the dead of night. Black, I just used the devil and you used your sacred source life form. I originally planned to kill you in the 3rd round, but I've changed my mind. Have you heard that devils can see through people's hearts? Upon hearing that, the corners of Lin Yuan's mouth curled up behind the mask. Whether a devil can see through people's hearts depends on whether this devil has the ability. But I can indeed see through what you're thinking in your heart. The side effect of the Bright World Earth Snake's diamond ability, Bright Snake Divine Connection, is irreversible. I think you're not willing to use it either. Lin Yuan's words caused Han Chi's expression to change drastically. After fighting for so long, it could be said that Han Chi had a vague impression of the opponent he was facing. His main Fae, the Bright World Earth Snake, could restrain that Sand-type Source-type life form. However, he did not expect this Sand-type Source-type life form to be able to precipitate steel from it. Steel was a metal-type power, and the metal type was not a variant of the Earth type. Therefore, the Bright World Earth Snake had no way to control it. This made it so that he had to protect the 2 independent 100 sequence members. He had lost the Dark Bamboo Viper. Now that the Sand-type Source-type life form had no effect, Black had summoned it to his feet. It formed a protective belt under his feet. This sand was the main body of those sand elemental source-type life forms. The Bright World Earth Snake could control the source sand and use the Earth type among the elements. However, it could not hinder the source sand from moving. Just now, in the battle with the snake guards that had hatched from the Yukio land snake, the source sand had protected Black a lot. He blocked the joint slash of the snake guard's 8 arms and the impact from the drill explosion of the weapon in his hand. Unless the floating world Bright Serpent kept using the skill Great Earth Remold. Otherwise, the source sand would stay by Black's side to protect him. However, Earth's Retribution was an AoE control skill. The pressure on Yukio was quite heavy. Even if he had a recovery method, Han Chi could not easily use it. After that, Black summoned the shadow of a woman formed by a golden bird. He was still standing beside Black. However, Han Chi was still unable to determine the nature of this Fae until now. He was unable to determine this Fae's species. Han Chi kept having the feeling that this female phantom was very similar to the killing heart guanine that the Sanskrit guanine snake condensed from snake-shaped musical notes. If that was the case, after fighting for so long, he had not even forced out the Fae's main body. The 8 cattails that suddenly appeared behind Black had already retracted. However, these 8 cattails undoubtedly belonged to a Fae. This Fae's ability was used by a spirit chi professional. Yet it was able to shatter the Sanskrit guanine snake's all-out attack. This made Han Chi feel an abnormally huge pressure. Moreover, Black still had a plant Fae that had performed outstandingly in the Radiance 100 sequence selection that had not been used. Apart from that, Black had used some unknown method. It was able to see through his Fae's ability. In a battle between Spirit Chi professionals, the most terrifying thing was the exposure of Fae's abilities and exclusive skills. Han Chi did not know that Black could see through his Fae's abilities and exclusive skills. It was because Black was a Class 4 or above Creation Master. Or was it because one of Black's Faes had a detection ability? No matter which one it was, Han Chi's heart had been possessed by the devil. The sense of security that he had felt was completely gone. Han Chi let out an angry roar. It was as though he wanted to roar away the uneasiness in his heart. Immediately after, a purple snake-shaped ring appeared out of nowhere on Han Chi's left ring finger. After this purple snake-shaped ring appeared, he immediately felt the aura of a sacred source life form. He knew that this ring should be the same as the Sacred Pursuit Sword and Gao Feng's memory-eating music box before they had been fused. They were all artifact-type sacred source life forms. He checked the snake-shaped ring. He found that it was called the Oath Revolving Snake Ring. It was a dark-type sacred source life form with the function of snake's love. Snake's love, subjective creation of a love concept that treats snakes as wives. In this state, the snake Fae's strength and ability can be transferred to oneself. The deeper the love, the higher the ability after the transfer. This kind of amplification due to love cannot be eliminated through any effects before the love is destroyed. After seeing the Oath Revolving Snake Ring's ability, Lin Yuan could not help but feel that his worldview was a little distorted. What a pervert. But to be honest, a sacred source life form like the Oath Revolving Snake Ring seemed to be quite suitable for Duan He. Even if Duan He could not contract the sacred source life form, the Oath Revolving Snake Ring would still be a good choice. If he was lucky enough to hold the artifact made from the Oath Revolving Snake Ring, his strength should be greatly enhanced. Moreover, Duan He was a henpecked man and had true love with Ziyao. With the artifact made from the Oath Revolving Snake Ring, Ziyao no longer had to worry about Duan He cheating. The sacred source life form, Oath Revolving Snake Ring, was a pinnacle class 3-star life form. Lin Yuan did not feel that it was strange. It had to be known that Zhongzai's sacred source life form had only been promoted to class 4 at the Dark Knight Assembly a few months ago. Furthermore, everyone had different priorities when it came to improving their strength. Lin Yuan, for example, had not placed his golden wing of the Desolation Bloodline Fae within the scope of his strength. This was because the golden wing's strength had just been promoted to gold. It would be instantly killed once it was pulled out. Lin Yuan was a typical example of not pouring resources into the Desolation Bloodline Fae. The main reason Lin Yuan had done this was to be able to give the golden wing the most optimal evolution method. If the golden wing only wanted to eat dragon liver, it would eat the dragon liver of the main dragon species Fae. If it wanted to drink phoenix blood, it would drink the phoenix blood of the main phoenix species Fae. Although Lin Yuan did not know what the ability of Han Chi, a middle-rank demon, was. However, Lin Yuan had basically grasped Han Chi's trump card. The sacred sword in Lin Yuan's hand made a sword flower. Then the sacred sword suddenly turned a pure white color. The originally simple sacred sword bloomed with dazzling holy light. An aura that far exceeded that of a fantasy breed suddenly erupted on the general execution stage. Below the stage, Lian Shen suddenly exclaimed. A pinnacle myth 2-phase attack. Why does it contain the smell of the world? Chapter 1719. The Goddess of Compassion's voice was very loud. It was immediately heard by Han Chi, who was on the stage. When the Moon Empress heard the Goddess of Compassion's words, she immediately snorted. She said in a deep voice, Concubine Lian, the younger generation of our two major federations are having a showdown. Don't think that you're the only one who can feel the strength of the attack. The Goddess of Compassion pursed her lips. Knowing that she was in the wrong, the Goddess of Compassion did not argue with the Moon Empress. She was just surprised to see Black brandishing the pure white holy sword. One must know that the strength of an attack was not the most important thing. In a battle between experts, the realm of an attack was more important. The attack of a peak myth 2 Fae had the aura of a creation seed. It was really unusual. This attack with the aura of the world collided with the myth 2 attack. That aura of the world allowed her attack to gain the upper hand in the collision. After Black unleashed this attack, the sky turned dark. The Goddess of Compassion's gaze no longer fell on Han Chi. In the Goddess of Compassion's eyes, Han Qi was basically equivalent to a dead person. The goddess of compassion could not be bothered to put any attention on a dead person. The goddess of compassion's words seemed to be a reminder to Han Qi. The goddess of compassion's words were actually a reminder to Han Qi. The goddess of compassion had revealed the strength of Black's attack. If Han Qi wanted to fight against it, there was only one way. That was to sacrifice. Only by performing a sacrifice would Han Qi have a chance of blocking this attack. Otherwise, only death would await him. With that thought, Han Qi gritted his teeth. He looked at Black, who was holding the pure white holy sword, with grief and indignation. His eyes were filled with hatred and resentment. Black had just used the Bright Snake's ability, Bright Snake Divine. Thinking about it, he should have a certain understanding of the effects of Bright Snake Divine. However, through the sacred source lifeform's oath around the snake ring, he had absorbed all the main phase strength into his body. The strength that he had displayed was far from what the Bright Snake's main body could compare to when it used Bright Snake Divine. He had fused with the Snake Bone Fear Ghost. His physique was already so strong that it was shocking. If Han Qi had originally absorbed the power of the Bright Snake and the Sanskrit Guanyin snake, it would have been difficult. Now, with the strength of Han Qi's physical body, he could easily control these two forces to fight. Han Qi planned to go all out and fight for a sliver of a chance to survive. According to the Bright Snake Divine ability, he wanted the Bright Snake of the floating world to reach its peak state. He also needed to sacrifice himself. That was the only way for the Bright Serpent of the floating world to make another breakthrough after breaking through a grade. It could be said that once this skill was used, no matter what the final outcome was, he and the Yukio Di Mingxi would definitely die. However, the Sanskrit Guanyin snake's skill, Feathered Serpent God. It could allow the Sanskrit Guanyin snake to burn its own bloodline and sacrifice its own body. Protect a target. It didn't matter what kind of sacrifice the target was making. The final result of the sacrifice was borne by the Sanskrit Guanyin snake. Right now, Han Qi planned to absorb the Sanskrit Guanyin snake to keep himself alive. As long as he could win this general execution battle. Even if he had truly become a cripple, he had still protected the glory of the Freedom Federation. At that time, he would definitely receive preferential treatment. In fact, the Majesties might even think of a way to recover themselves. At the thought of this, Han Qi, who had clearly chosen to abandon his two snake species phase, suddenly changed his mind. She looked at the Yukio Di Ming snake and the Sanskrit Guanyin snake affectionately. Immediately after, the sacred source lifeform's oath surrounded snake ring's effect. Snake's love activated. The power of the Sanskrit Guanyin serpent and the Yukio earthly bright serpent surged into the body of the devilized Han Qi. At the same time, the Yukio land snake used its bright snake connection skill. Han Qi also sacrificed himself. But under the protection of the Sanskrit Guanyin snake's skill, Feathered Serpent God. Han Qi, who had sacrificed his physical body, was still standing on the back of the bright snake of the world unscathed. Both the motionless earth serpent and the Sanskrit Guanyin serpent hissed in pain. The bodies of the Sanskrit Guanyin snake and the Yukio earth bright snake were disappearing bit by bit. The two snake phase souls were also constantly dissipating under the burning. In the end, only Han Qi himself was left on Han Qi's side. The two huge snake phase had already disappeared. Lin Yuan was aware of this situation. It should be the snake demon that had possessed Han Qi. It had a special ability. Otherwise, even if the motionless earth serpent and the Sanskrit Guanyin snake sacrificed themselves, in a short period of time, their physical bodies would not perish so thoroughly. Han Qi raised the Class 5 treasure artifact, the Demon Lizard Fong Blade. It merely swung forward. Those wild snakes that were burning with flames were all killed by Han Qi's attack. These wild snakes' vitality and spiritual power were quickly replenished into Han Qi's body through the treasure artifact, the Demon Lizard Fong Blade. At that moment, 13 carriages suddenly flew out of Lin Yuan's pure white sacred sword. After these 13 carriages flew out of the pure white sacred sword, they kept galloping in the sky. Unbeknownst to them, 13 Valkyries' bodies formed by holy light suddenly appeared on the carriage. These Valkyries wore armor and had cloaks that fluttered behind them for nearly 100 meters. As the carriages ran around, they suddenly pulled out the sword at their waist. In an instant, a rain of light sprinkled from the sky. Lin Yuan raised the sacred sword and used his unparalleled movement technique to quickly approach Han Qi. Han Qi also twisted the 5 or 6 snake tails that were intertwined behind it. Like an arrow that had left the bow, it attacked Lin Yuan. When it got close, it was about to engage in close combat. Han Chi's grayish-black vertical pupils suddenly expanded. It directly burst the corners of Han Chi's eyes. It caused Han Chi's originally jujube-sized eyes to suddenly become the size of eggs. The black whites of his eyes were stained with blood. It carried a hint of malevolence and coquettishness. Han Chi's vertical pupils, which had been enlarged by 4 times, seemed to have turned into a beautiful snake that was constantly twisting its body and seducing Lin Yuan. This was the unique charm aura of a devil. It was enough to lead a strong-willed person to fall into the bottomless hell. They would become a chess piece that the devil had conquered and played with in the palm of his hand. Han Chi used the snake devil's impurity power to try his best to seduce it. It indeed caused Lin Yuan's mind to tremble slightly, even though Lin Yuan's mind was already extremely firm. However, Han Chi's charm and seduction made Morbius spontaneously use its passive ability, Calm Mind. As Morbius' strength continued to increase. At that moment, Morbius had become a Gold X/Fantasy V Fae. Through Calm Mind, Lin Yuan could be immune to most negative effects. It had to be known that when Morbius was Silver X/Fantasy V, this would allow him to remain conscious when the strange plant seed entered his body. Han Chi originally thought that Black would be under his control. In the worst-case scenario, Black's sword-swinging speed would slow down. However, Han Chi was wrong. 7017K. Chapter 1720. Not only was Black not controlled by him, but it did not even slow down. He used the pure white sword in his hand to clash with his Class 5 treasure lizard snake blade. Han Chi staked everything on one throw. Through the sacred source life form, Oath encircling snake ring, Black had absorbed his 2 snake phase. He had also used the snake devil's ability to absorb the bodies of his 2 phase. Subsequently, he had increased his physical strength and strength. Now, a casual attack from Han Chi had the might of a pinnacle myth 2 Fae. The strength of his physical body was equivalent to the sum of a middle-rank abyss devil, the floating earth snake and the Sanskrit guanine snake. Han Chi thought that after the clash with Black Sword, he would have the upper hand. He did not expect that Black Sword was not as simple as he had imagined. After the first clash, Han Chi brandished his saber 3 times. He struck the sacred sword in Black's hand 3 times. The attacks forced Black to retreat repeatedly. However, Han Chi had not yet enjoyed the feeling of having the upper hand. Out of the 13 Valkyries in the sky, 4 of them suddenly flew down. They pulled out their long swords and slashed at themselves. Han Chi's sacred source life form and the middle rank abyss devil snake bone fear ghost were all dark-type existences. The light attribute had a strong restraining effect on him. Han Chi realized that even if he used the demon lizard snake blade to slice these 4 Valkyries into pieces, before the light attribute energy completely dissipated, the light elements would continue to condense into the Valkyries' appearances and attack him. Han Chi calculated that he had to slice the Valkyries in half 3 times before the Valkyries would dissipate. Han Chi calculated that the 4 Valkyries that flew down should be because he had clashed with Black Sword 4 times. It was probably because he had touched the sword in Black's hand 4 times. Back then, if he had slashed 13 times in a row, he was afraid that he would be attacked by the 13 Valkyries now. At that moment, Han Chi saw Black coming up to meet him. Han Chi wanted to use his combat skills to prevent the demon lizard tooth blade from colliding with Black's pure white sacred sword. However, Black seemed to see through his actions. Every strike landed squarely on his demon lizard tooth blade. The Valkyries circling in the sky all flew down. The arena seemed to have become a training ground for the 13 Valkyries of light. After several collisions, Lin Yuan, who had retreated to the back, realized that his hands were shaking. It was very difficult to hold the holy sword in his hand. If he hadn't been using the lily to heal his arm. After these few clashes with Han Chi, Lin Yuan's bones would probably shatter into dust. Lin Yuan knew that unless he executed more sword skills, he would not be able to defeat Qin Feng. Otherwise, if they fought head-on, they would definitely not be Han Chi's match. There was a time limit for Han Chi to fuse with the devil and increase his strength through the Bright Snake Divine Connection. Every minute and every second was exceptionally precious to Han Chi. And now Han Chi was being held up by this sword technique of his, the Martial God's Protection Strike. Martial God's Protection Strike was a defensive sword technique. In battle, every time he was attacked by an enemy, he would receive help from the Valkyrie. Before the Valkyrie ran out of energy, she suffered no damage. They would not dissipate. Of course, being attacked would consume the light energy in the Valkyrie's body. Of the 13 Valkyries, 2 had been killed by Han Qi. The light on the 6 Valkyries became dimmer and dimmer. On the other hand, Han Qi's attacks also became fiercer and fiercer, becoming more and more violent. Han Qi knew very well that the time he could fuse with the snake bone fear ghost was limited to 3 minutes. The bright snake divine connections effect was also around 4 minutes. This meant that he would start fusing with the devil snake. He had to end the battle within 3 minutes. He used the sacred source life form to surround the oath snake ring. He absorbed the myth Tu Fei that the bright snake of the floating world had obtained through the bright snake divine connection into his body. He was relying on the strong physique he had obtained after fusing with the snake bone fear ghost. Even if he was separated from the snake bone fear ghost, he still would not give up the bright snake divine connection's power. Then this power would directly explode him into pieces that filled the sky. There was only 1 minute left. Han Qi simply reserved 1/5 of the spiritual power in his body. The rest of the spiritual power was poured into the demon lizard Fong blade. Han Qi placed the demon lizard Fong blade at his waist. He spun it 3 times. The 3 indiscriminate attacks directly killed these Valkyries. However, Han Qi did not know that during his battle with the Valkyries, many people were watching. The gazes of everyone watching the battle were focused on the Fae that Black had just summoned. The Lien God had an extreme pursuit of beauty. In the Lien God's heart, the most beautiful and the most adorable. It was those fairy source-type life forms. Thus, the Lien God had been working to make fairy source-type life forms into dolls. She hung them on the windmill in front of her palace. But at this moment, the Lien God felt that, no matter how many fairy source-type life forms there were, they could not compare to the one by Black's side. A butterfly that flew high in the sky. This butterfly was purple in color and there were many layers of purple. Thousands of purple colors gathered on this butterfly's body. It was as if one could see all the colors in the world with one glance. This butterfly was willing to fly in the sky. It made people involuntarily feel that this was the luck of the heavens. The Fae's beauty was extreme. It was probably the appearance of this purple butterfly. As the purple wings flapped, sparkling scales sprinkled down. It was beautiful to the soul. Those who followed Black on Star Web knew that he had the legendary Fae, the blue flash purple butterfly. However, the blue flash purple butterfly's appearance was far from this purple butterfly's. If the blue flash purple butterfly was compared to a cobblestone, then this purple butterfly was like a glass-type imperial purple jade. However, this purple butterfly was somewhat similar to the blue flash purple butterfly that Black had summoned. This purple butterfly must have evolved from the blue flash purple butterfly. After Lin Yuan summoned Zishao, he gave her an order. Purple Cloud, use Silent Scale Powder and use 2 exclusive skills at the same time. After Purple Firmament heard Lin Yuan's order, it flew toward Han Qi. All the Star Web viewers couldn't help but hold their breaths as their hearts tensed up. Although Black was Hui Yao's hero, all the Star Web viewers could not help but want to curse Black fiercely. Why did you send such a beautiful little butterfly to fight? However, at that moment the Radiance Federation's 13 High Lords, the Freedom Federation's High Lord, the Compassion Goddess, Li Su had arrived. Second Page Revival was hidden in the team. Lan Sun, who was in the Azure Federation, narrowed his eyes. They all thought of a legend. They didn't expect this legend to be true. It seemed that there was no suspense in this battle. At that moment the Star Web viewers only saw this beautiful purple butterfly. The moment the Valkyrie's phantom disappeared, it flapped its wings toward Han Qi and sprinkled beautiful pinkish-purple scales. 7017K. Chapter 1721. The light reflected by the pinkish-purple scale powder shone on the 5,000 square meter execution platform. It enveloped 10% of the purple light. The purple light was dreamy, and all the audience could not help but be mesmerized. It was as though their hearts and souls were being attracted by this pinkish-purple color and could not escape. Purple Sky's ability was Silence Scale Powder. It could release an adhesive scale powder with a silence effect. The target that came into contact with the scale powder would not be able to communicate with Spirit Chi to release abilities. At the same time, the target would also absorb the opponent's Spirit Chi. Under the effect of Spirit Chi, the scale powder would absorb Spirit Chi to multiply. This ability did not have much effect on Han Qi at the moment. Han Qi did not need to release the ability now. He only needed to use the energy contained in his body to slash the class demon lizard Fang blade. Lin Yuan did not point to Purple Sky using the silence scale powder to harm Han Qi. Purple Sky's main killer move was not the exclusive skill Scale Powder Halo. Scale Powder Halo reflected strong light through its own scale powder, causing the target to suffer optical pollution. It caused dizziness and temporary blindness, which was a kind of group control. Han Qi was now in a state of dizziness and blindness. He could casually slash the demon lizard Fang blade and attack the surroundings indiscriminately. It allowed the concentrated attacks to have a defensive effect during the period of blindness. In fact, Lin Yuan could summon Purple Sky because of the exclusive skill Mind Soul Beauty Goddess that it had obtained when summoning a fantasy breed. Purple Sky itself was a kind of extremely beautiful fae that was appreciated by the world. Purple Sky could use the spirit and soul power contained in its body. It used spirit and soul power as a catalyst. It magnified beauty to an unlimited extent. It created a charm and attraction effect on the target, causing the target to enter a state of affection. The target that entered a state of affection would instinctively want to keep everything from Purple Sky's main body on its body forever. The target that was in a state of affection would feel proud of collecting Purple Sky's main body's things. The middle-rank demon that Han Qi had just contracted had used a charm method to seduce Lin Yuan. Lin Yuan decided to give it a taste of its own medicine. He would let the Freedom Federation's unique demon know. In terms of charm, you demons are just the younger brother. Under the scale powder, Han Qi, who was clearly blinded, attacked the surroundings indiscriminately. He breathed in the scale powder that Purple Sky had sprinkled. It was as though the scale powder that Purple Sky sprinkled was Han Qi's most beloved object. A large amount of scale powder was absorbed into Han Qi's body. The devil hidden in Han Qi's body and fused with him was naturally affected as well. The affected devils resisted for a short while. He subconsciously fought with Han Qi for the scale powder that he absorbed into his body. A large amount of scale powder gathered in the body of the snake bone demon. As a result, Snake Bone Fear of Ghosts lost the ability to activate the spiritual energy within its body and unleash its skills. Without waiting for the intoxicated Han Qi to react, Yi Qingtang's eyes lit up. Han Qi's body, which had fused with the snake bone and the ghost, instantly swelled up in the purple mist and exploded into pieces. And from Han Qi's body, a body covered in sharp bone spikes fell down. The snake's sharp tail rose high in the air. The end of the tail pierced through the throat and strangled the strange life form. This life form had a timid expression on its face. But under his cowardice, his eyes were filled with sinister schemes. The aura of depravity on his body made people feel very uncomfortable. This strange and terrifying creature was precisely the snake bone fear ghost that had suffered heavy injuries due to the energy explosion in Han Qi's body. According to normal circumstances, Han Qi's death would not have happened. At this moment, Snake Bones was afraid of ghosts, so he should not be breathing. However, this snake bone fear ghost did not seem to be affected at all. Li Su immediately knew that this was a devil produced by the Freedom Federation's Devil Cathedral. It would not be like a bloodline of Desolation Fae, which would disappear with the death of the contractor. Instead, it could survive independently. Of course, Lin Yuan could not jump to a conclusion without careful research on this snake bone coward. This snake bone fear ghost wanted to escape, but it was bound by the quicksand vortex that suddenly appeared. At that moment, Li Su could finally see the devil's true data. With a glance, Li Su realized something. The devil's data was different from Fae's. The devil's abilities and exclusive skills could only be activated and used after fusing with a spirit chi professional. This made the devil look like a kind of companion life form. Furthermore, Han Qi had fused with this snake bone fear ghost earlier, and its strength had increased by a huge margin. That was why its physical body had reached the level of a myth breed Fae. It was enough to withstand the power of a pinnacle myth too. Could be said that the devil could be called the most outstanding kind of possession life form. Putting aside the fact that this devil was already seriously injured. Even if it was not seriously injured, it would still be able to wrestle with the Diamond X/Fantasy V Source Sand. It might not be able to defeat the Source Sand. After all, the Source Sand had always been nurtured by Lin Yuan in the best way. When Li Su had turned the Source Sand into a cage to capture the snake bone fear ghost. This general execution duel was because the main general had died. It was completely over. As for the two independent 100 sequence members who had ascended the general execution stage, before Han Qi, when they had no choice but to attack, they had already died on the general execution stage. After ascending the general execution stage, they had not been able to unleash their strength. However, they had been killed by their own people. No matter how one looked at it, it was full of irony. At that moment, the Star Web audience was in a complete uproar. In this duel, Lin Yuan might not have displayed his full strength. However, this duel could definitely be called an evenly matched duel. This general execution duel would be decided in one duel. The duel lasted for nearly 20 minutes. It allowed all the Radiance Federation's citizens to know how the top spirit chi professionals of the younger generation fought. Horizon Maple Leaf. Black is too strong. What kind of duel is this? Why do I feel that such a duel is beyond my understanding? Black is probably stronger than the top 10 of the 100 sequence. Memories in the wind. Hee hee. I'm from the Myriad Generals Pavilion, a top faction. Based on my understanding of the 100 sequence, I'm afraid that apart from His Majesty's disciples, Lu Jie and Xia Qing, no one else has the ability to fight against Black. Light of Tomorrow. Black Bull Pen. After being a fan of Black for so long, Black has once again become the hero of the Radiance Federation. Purple Star. This time the people that the Freedom Federation sent were killed by Black. There won't be any conflict, right? Past Black. Do you think that the purple-haired youth that Black killed on the Freedom Federation's side did not have the intention to kill? If it wasn't for Black's strength and its unexpected resistance to poison, Black would have been dead after being bitten by that little blue snake. The spectators on Star Web were constantly discussing. The entire Star Web was in an excited and uplifting mood. It was because of a youth wearing a silver mask. The Freedom Federation and the Radiance Federation had collided, and the Radiance Federation had won. 7017K. Chapter 1722. It was different from the cheers and excitement on Star Web. The candidates and the Radiance 100 sequence members were surprised by Black's strength. They were proud of him. But now everyone was holding their breath nervously. After the general execution battle, the team battle would be held soon. The examinees and the members of the Liberal 100 sequence present were the clearest about their own abilities. Especially the Radiance 100 sequence members who had just been selected, the 91st to the 100th. For example, Li Nao and Zhang Zihao could be 100% sure. If the two of them went up, they would definitely be like the two independent 100 sequence members. Even if they were affected by the battle's aftermath, they would lose their lives. Han Qi was using the Demon Lizard Fong Blade the entire time on the general execution stage. Under Black's restriction of only being able to use one precious treasure, Black chose to use an artifact to protect the two Radiance 100 sequence members who were on the stage. Black was really gentle. Black was standing on the general execution stage. There were two new suns above his head. The shadow of a woman whose entire body was fiery red was holding a phoenix neck pipa in her hand and standing beside Black. The purple butterfly that had bewitched all the audience landed on the silver mask on Blackie's forehead. Before that, purple snake-shaped devil was completely controlled and bound. Even if there was a trace of danger, Black did not release the two Radiance 100 sequence members. Such a Black could be called a true leader of the Radiance 100's younger generation. Even compared to the Radiance envoy Lu Yifan, he was not inferior and equally dazzling. The Moon Empress looked at Lin Yuan in surprise. The strength that Lin Yuan had displayed was beyond the Moon Empress' imagination. The Moon Empress had always known that Lin Yuan was very strong. However, she did not expect him to be so strong. She had only become Lin Yuan's master for less than a year. When Lin Yuan had become her master, he had still been a rookie who could not resist a platinum fey. But now, after a few months of growth, Lin Yuan was already standing at the peak of the Radiance 100's younger generation. Or rather, it was not just Radiance. In the entire Origin world, Lin Yuan was an absolutely dazzling existence. It was hard to look away from his dazzling brilliance. The Moon Empress could feel that the other 12 excellencies were looking at her in surprise. They were probably thinking about how she nurtured her disciples. The Moon Empress actually had many ideas on how to nurture Lin Yuan. But the Moon Empress realized something. Lin Yuan did not like receiving his help. In other words, he had always been self-sufficient as a creation master. Not only did the Moon Empress not want to investigate all of this, but she also didn't want to He had always wanted to help Lin Yuan hide. However, it was precisely because of this that the Moon Empress felt that Lin Yuan was a prodigy. To put it bluntly, even if he didn't become Lin Yuan's teacher, he wouldn't be able to do so. As long as Lin Yuan didn't cause any trouble in the early stages and was targeted by others, he wouldn't be able to escape. He had a certain amount of time to develop and accumulate. If Lin Yuan wanted to, he was still qualified to take a step forward. By becoming a Radiance 100 sequence member, he would fight for the position of a Radiance envoy 2 years later. At that moment, the Moon Empress' eyes slowly turned from shock to pride and honor. On the Azure Federation's side, Lan Sun frowned several times. Lan Sun frowned. This had nothing to do with Black. It was all because of Yin Lin. Lan Sun could see that Yin Lin was very nervous about Black the whole time. When Black was attacked, Yin Lin would feel uneasy and angry. When Black gained an advantage, Yin Lin would be excited and happy. It could be said that Black's situation in the arena completely controlled Yin Lin's emotions. This was something that Lan Sun could not understand. Then Lan Sun had an idea. He suddenly recalled the relationship between Yin Lin and the Moon Empress disciple Lin Yuan. Starting from the Radiance Federation, Yin Lin had only been moved by these two people. Lan Sun took a few glances at the Moon Empress and thought to himself, Black should be the same person as Lin Yuan. If that was the case, then when the Freedom Federation was targeting the Radiance Federation would not be able to survive. The Radiance Federation had also set up a huge trap for the Freedom Federation. His guess was correct. As an Azure envoy, Yin Lin had already joined the fray. For the Radiance sect, he had ruthlessly cheated the Freedom Federation. Thinking of this, Lan Sun sighed. He seemed to have predicted that after the team battle, both the Radiance and Freedom Federation would be defeated. A conflict was bound to break out. He only hoped that when the time came, the Azure Federation would not be dragged into this. However, seeing Yin Lin's current state, was it really possible? On the Freedom Federation's side, Li Yi frowned. It could be said that the current situation was completely out of Li Yi's expectations. Under normal circumstances, Han Qi should not have appeared in the Independent 100 sequence. It was for this plan that Li Yi had asked Du Miao to arrange a seat for Han Qi in the Independent 100 sequence a year in advance. Otherwise, given Han Qi's situation, there was no need for him to become a member of the Independent 100 sequence. Du Miao had not publicly accepted Han Qi as a disciple. However, he had secretly taught Han Qi for more than 5 years. Han Qi was Li Yi who had informed Du Miao of his plan. He had borrowed it from Du Miao. Now that Han Qi was dead, Li Yi felt that when he returned to the Freedom Federation, he really had no way to explain to Du Miao. Du Miao would probably go crazy if his 5 years of hard work went to waste. After Han Qi died, Lian Shen's face did not have a trace of other expression. It was as if the one who died was not the Freedom Federation's prodigy. Lian Shen was still reminiscing about the feeling she had felt from Black just now. The Freedom Federation's mission to the Radiance Federation was Li Yi's idea, and it had nothing to do with her. Lian Shen's purpose for coming here was to ensure Qian Yu's safety. At the same time, Lian Shen had another plan in mind. That was if it was possible. Lian Shen planned to take Black away from the Radiance Federation. Then she would properly check Black inside and out. She would see what Black was relying on to make her feel a trace of palpitation. Qian Yu's face was gloomy. On the Radiance Federation's side, Black's strength was simply too astonishing. After a duel, even Qian Yu, who was a Freedom envoy, was unable to completely see Black's depths. It was an attack from the 8 cat tails. Qian Yu could not help but tremble in fear. It was a known fact that this attack was not unleashed by a Fae. It was used by Black through the Fae's ability. The power was at least 30% weaker. Yanling, Kaihua and Yu Chongjian. There was even a hint of delight on his face. Han Qi was the same age as the trio and was in a competitive relationship with them. In the future they would definitely compete for the position of Freedom Envoy and Freedom Knight. Now there was one less opponent. This reduced a lot of pressure on the trio. On the Freedom Federation's side, there was a sorrowful look on their faces. Only that young man with short white hair remained. At that moment Lin Yuan, who was on the general execution platform, suddenly realized something. The snake bone fear ghost which was bound by him had changed. 7017K. Chapter 1723. Originally, Snake Bone's timid ghost was only seriously injured. The source sand wrapped around Snake Bones' timid ghost's wrist and ankles and extracted chain swords. These 8 chain swords, which were made of radium-uranium steel, completely locked Snake Bones' timid ghost in place. However, in less than 3 minutes, Li Tianlan's expression changed. Snake Bones' timid ghost suddenly leaked a large amount of vitality for unknown reasons. Lin Yuan did not use the source sand to attack Snake Bones' timid ghost, but it died under the source sand's restraint. Lin Yuan's plan to capture a middle-rank demon alive completely failed. The dead Snake Bones' timid ghost's body gradually turned into an eye-like black crystal. The moment the black crystal appeared, Lin Fan's eyes widened. Yanling Kaihua and Yu Changjian looked at this black crystal with greedy eyes. This eye-like black crystal was very important to the 3 of them. On the battlefield, Han Qi had been the defeated party. Everything that Han Qi and the 2 Liberal 100 sequence members had been controlled by Lin Yuan, who was the victor. Everything had been controlled by Lin Yuan, who was the victor. Previously, when Lin Yuan had been training in the dimensional rift, the source sand would spontaneously help Lin Yuan collect the spoils of war. After losing the control of the floating earth serpent, the source sand became active. It devoured all the spoils of war on the battlefield and put them into the guard sand. At that moment, the guard sand's palm was holding 3 pieces of spatial equipment. The Class 5 Demon Lizard Fong Blade, the Class 4 Snake Arm Guard, and the Class 4 Terror Serpent Ring. There was also the Class 3 Sacred Source Life Form, the oath encircling the Snake World's remains. Any one of these items could be considered a huge fortune. Especially the 2 Class 4 artifacts and 1 Class 5 artifact. Such resources could already be considered a Federation's foundational resources. A Class 5 Creation Master would need more than a month to refine a Class 4 artifact. A Class 5 artifact would need nearly 2 months to refine. The 3 artifacts did not include the Sacred Source Lifeform's body. They would need to occupy a Class 5 Creation Master's body for nearly 4 months. Lin Yuan took out a diamond face storage box that he had never used before in front of the Freedom Federation's envoys. He stored all these items in the diamond face storage box. Then he walked off the stage. Other than Lu O, the Freedom Federation's envoys, no one mourned Han Qi's death. But the younger generation, including Qian Yu, all gritted their teeth and looked at Black. He wished he could break Black's bones and drain Black's blood. Lin Yuan ignored these gazes and calmly walked down the general execution stage. The moment Lin Yuan walked off the general execution platform, cheers rang out on Star Web and in the real world. And he, Zhongzhe, Gulang, Lujia and Gaofeng all knew that Lin Yuan was Black. Among these people, and he and Zhongzhe were the most shocked. Both of them had fought with Lin Yuan before. The strength that Lin Yuan had displayed in this battle was the same as the battle against Zhongzhe at the Nix assembly. Moreover, the trump card he used in the battle with Anha on the island was completely different. When Lin Yuan had fought against Zhongzhe, he had used the Jackdaw's Withering Strike to establish his victory. When he was fighting in he still used the Jackdaw's Withering Strike. Later, when he had helped the Mother of Bloodbath awaken its favored spirit bloodline, he had executed the Whale Sea Leaping Wave Strike. The Whale Sea Leaping Wave Strike made he think that this was Lin Yuan's full strength. On the sea, Lin Yuan had executed the Whale Sea Leaping Wave Strike with the advantage of the geographical environment. It was enough to contend with a Myth 3 Fei. At that time, and he had already been convinced by Lin Yuan after he had executed the Whale Sea Leaping Wave Strike. However, Lin Yuan was also holding this sacred sword. He had executed a sword skill that Zhongzhe and he had never seen before. Both of them suddenly felt that even if they had improved, if they fought again, they would not be Lin Yuan's match. Their improvement in strength was also related to Lin Yuan. If not for that heavenly maiden-grade elemental pearl containing the goddess Gossamer, Zhongzhe's Desolation Bloodline Fei, the Burning Sky Centipede, could not purify its bloodline and master the top-notch Red Plum Meteorite Fire. Without the nearly 1,000 heavenly maiden-grade elemental pearls that Lin Yuan had given. And he could not have allowed the mountain-suppressing centipede and the awakening hibernation earth dragon to purify and mutate one's bloodline. Seeing Lin Yuan walk back to the team, Lu Jie subconsciously took 2 steps forward and stood beside Lin Yuan. Lu Yifan gave Lin Yuan a thumbs up. This scene was seen by the Star Web audience. It was equivalent to Black obtaining the Radiance Envoy's affirmation. Those who had been guessing what kind of phase Black had on Star Web. After this battle, the nervousness in their hearts dissipated. They kept posting and discussing the phase that Black had revealed. Lu Shuang's live-streaming room exploded again after 8 tails appeared behind Black. However, as a pinnacle king-class expert, Lu Shuang did not keep commentating like before in order to collect traffic. Lu Shuang silently prayed in her heart. In this general execution battle, the enmity between the Radiance Federation and the Freedom Federation was completely formed. The team battle would undoubtedly be much more tragic than the general execution battle. The duel between the two sides would probably only stop when one side was completely annihilated. At this moment, there was a group of people in black armor, all of them wearing copper masks on their faces. The masks were engraved with numbers. This group of people had a total of 12 people. Just as they were about to reach the Radiance Federation, they encountered 4 carriages. These 4 carriages were very strange. The 4 carriages were not pulled by the 4 different colored stone horses in front of the carriages. These 4 different colored stone horses were lifted by 4 groups of ascetics who were suffering from different hardships. These ascetics who were suffering from hardships were pulling the carriages forward at a fast speed. Each carriage hid a powerful and obscure aura. At that moment, the small group of people wearing copper masks intercepted the 4 carriages. The leader of the small group said in a cold voice, "The 4 horsemen under Ta Dian Yingzhu and second page. Death riding on the green horse, famine riding on the black horse, war riding on the red horse and plague riding on the white horse. After 1,000 years we meet again. Are you guys also going to the Radiance continent?" After being intercepted, the ascetics who were pulling the carriages stopped in their tracks. The ascetics who were pulling the green carriages were all dead. They had turned into soul-burning undead creatures. These undead creatures' bodies were deathly pale and their clothes were ragged. It was unknown how many disasters they had suffered when they were alive. It was such a group of people who were pulling the palace-like green carriages. The ascetics who were pulling the black carriages were all as thin as a match. The ascetics who were 1.8 meters tall were definitely not more than 25 kilograms. Their skin was wrapped around their bones like an iron cage covered by a cloth. The ascetics who were pulling the red carriages were all well built. However, each of them had injuries from the war. Fresh blood kept flowing out of the ascetics' wounds. 7017K. Chapter 1724. As for the holy white carriage, the ascetics pulling it were all infected with the plague. Their bodies were covered with pustules and they kept vomiting. The plague miasma surrounded the ascetics. It corroded the air and made sizzling sounds. At that moment, the door of the red carriage was opened from the inside. A red sarcophagus was pushed out of the carriage by some unknown force. After the red sarcophagus appeared, the sarcophagus cracked. After the battle 3,000 years ago, the Tower Cannon and the Epic Temple signed an agreement. The Tower Cannon's 8th page closed the world for 3,000 years. Our Tower Cannon did it. On the other hand, your Epic Temple couldn't find that so-called sage for 3,000 years. You've been hindering our Tower Cannon's plan. Upon hearing that, the figure wearing the copper mask who spoke just now heard it. He took off his mask and took a deep breath. He spat in the direction of the red sarcophagus. A force that could split the sea by 1,000 meters crashed into the red sarcophagus. A muffled sound was heard. The Tower Cannon has done a lot of tricks in the past 3,000 years. The 4 of you have endured for 3,000 years, and your powers shouldn't have fully recovered. At your peak, our small team couldn't take down the 4 of you. But now I alone can capture the 4 of you. We have to investigate something in the Radiance continent. Before we finish, the people of the Tower Cannon are not allowed to step in. Otherwise, I won't spit out level 5 mutated water next time, but level 6 mutated water. After saying that, the man put the copper mask on his face again. The figure in the red sarcophagus didn't say anything. At that moment, the door of the white carriage opened. The white sarcophagus was pushed out by an unknown force. A feminine voice rang out. "In that case, the 4 of us will go back first. But the Tower Cannon and the Epic Temple will remember this debt." The figure wearing the copper mask heard that. The debts of the Epic Temple and the Pagoda Cannon are endless. If we really want to settle the debt, it'll be the 4 temple attendants who will settle it with you 8 pages. It's not up to me, Chio 21, to settle it with you. If it wasn't me leading the team this time but Lord Qiufeng. You won't be able to escape this time. The ascetics pulling the cart crawled around after receiving the order. Finally, with great difficulty he straightened his tormented body. He dragged the 4 carriages and headed in the opposite direction of the Radiance continent. The young man standing behind Xianxia was stunned by the scene. The purple flame of the black candle in his eyes flickered slightly. Then the expression on his face relaxed. It was as if he didn't care about any of this at all. When Qiu 21 led the team and was about to enter the Radiance continent, he suddenly seemed to have received some kind of command. A look of disbelief appeared on his face. Qiu 21 said to the 11 bronze-masked figures behind him, "Lord Hall attendant wants us to return to the shrine. It's said that the totem in the shrine has evolved." Hearing that, although the other 11 figures were all wearing masks, they didn't dare to make a move. However, at that moment, those people all revealed joyous and excited expressions. Then the 12 figures flew toward the epic sacred hall at a speed even faster than when they had arrived. Inside the temple, 4 attendants were kneeling on the ground. They raised their heads and stared at the totem in the hall without blinking. Originally, there was only the totem god on the totem. There was also Lord Sage, who was above the Lord Totem and had his hand in the center of the totem god. But at this moment, a totem in the shape of a cat with 8 tails had appeared beside the sage. There was a bird-shaped totem with a corona on its head, a bone lotus totem and a butterfly-shaped totem. No one knew what these 4 new totems meant. They also didn't know what these 4 totems represented. Why did they appear beside Lord Sage? However, the changes in the totems proved that Lord Totem God and Lord Sage definitely existed in this world. And some kind of change had occurred. The 4 attendants respectfully kowtowed to the 4 newly appeared totems 3 times. During the kowtowing process, no one noticed. It was unknown when Lord Sage's other hand had grasped a treasure sword that was held by a young girl. However, this sword was behind the sage's stone carving. Only when the light in the temple was the brightest could one see a trace of it. After exiting the temple, among the 4 of them the only female voice spoke. Since Lord Totem God and Lord Sage's totems have both changed, it means that even if the epic bell is in chaos, it won't be affected. Before the main world is completely in turmoil, we should still follow the original plan and continue to wait. This female voice's suggestion was obviously approved by the other 3. At that moment, the female voice continued. The totems have already changed. There is no need for the 4 of us to continue to sleep. The power accumulated in these 3,000 years should now be completely absorbed into Lord Totem God's body. After saying that, the female directly returned to her temple. The excess power accumulated in her body for many years. In the process of kowtowing, it was transmitted into Lord Totem God's totem. The other 3, one in front and one behind. They all made the same choice. At that moment, Lin Yuan suddenly felt that his wrist was unusually hot. At that moment, Morbius' voice suddenly sounded in Lin Yuan's mind. "Partner, I don't know why, but there is a sudden surge of huge power in my body. This power has all been transformed into the power source and stored. From now on, as long as there are no special circumstances, I should not fall into a deep sleep again. Furthermore, I can squander this source energy. My power source can do many things." Hearing that, Lin Yuan felt a little strange. Lin Yuan had always thought of Morbius as a kind of fae. Lin Yuan had never heard of a fae's body. An example of a sudden surge of huge power. However, since this was beneficial to Morbius, Lin Yuan did not think too much about it. He planned to return to the Return from Faraway Manor after this team battle, and then have a good chat with Morbius. Lu Wenqing, who was originally in charge of this duel, stood up again and said, "In the first general execution battle, the Freedom Federation's main general is dead. The Radiance Federation's side wins. Next, let's start the team battle. I wonder how the Freedom Federation wants to compete in the team battle. According to the rules of the 10,000 Nations Conference, the losing side of the general execution battle would decide how many people to enter the team battle. As for the rules of the team battle, it would be decided by the winning side." It could be said that Lin Yuan's slaughter battle had given the Radiance Federation an advantage in the team battle. Chapter 1725. When Qian Yu heard Lu Wenqing's words, his expression darkened. Qian Yu glanced at the masked black with a fearful expression. Qian Yu finally knew that there were tough bones in the Radiance 100 sequence. It was the same as the situation on his side. Han Qi's strength definitely could not compare to Luo. Han Qi was merely a disciple that His Holiness Du Miao had yet to accept. Furthermore, His Majesty Du Miao had many people that he cared for, and his resources were distributed to too many people. Thus, no matter how one looked at it, even if Han Qi was accepted as a disciple by His Holiness Du Miao, he was still the one with the lowest status among all the disciples of His Holiness. But Lu O was taken in as a disciple by Her Highness Na Na when he was young. Moreover, there were rumors that Lu O was the son of Her Highness Na Na. Nana doted on Lu O a lot. Han Qi only had 3 treasured weapons on him. However, if Lu O were to take out all the treasures he had on him, he would have more than 10. After all, Her Majesty Na was the leader of the Freedom Federation. He was the most qualified to be called God. At the same time, Nana was also a Class 5 creation master. Qian Yu and Lu O had known each other for 6 to 7 years. Qian Yu had always been envious of Lu O's resources. Moreover, the devil that Lu O contracted wasn't a middle-rank devil like them. Instead, it was a superior great devil. Qian Yu wasn't sure about the Radiance Federation's side. Were there any other hard bones hiding? The strongest people on his side were Lu O, Yanling, Kai Hua, Yu Changjian and Qian Yu, since he was the one who had confirmed the number of players on his side. Qian Yu naturally set the number of people to be 5. This was the most advantageous number for their side. Originally, Qian Yu had the thought of killing all the Radiance 100 sequence members. But now, the battle between Black and Han Qi. This caused Qian Yu to lose a portion of his sharpness and become more cautious. The leader, Qian Yu, did not discuss with the others. He said directly, "Our side's rule is that the number of people going up is 5. As the victor of the general execution battle, the Radiance faction has raised 3 requests. Our Freedom Federation needs the right to deny it." After Qian Yu expressed his stance, Lu Wenqing, who was Hui Yao's holiness, did not say anything else. Lu Yifan said, "Out of the 3 restrictions, the Freedom Federation can remove one of them. This is your right. I don't need you to remind me about this." Lu Yifan turned around and looked at Zhongzhe, Lu Jia and Gao Feng. Finally, his gaze landed on Lin Yuan. Clearly, the Freedom Federation had limited the number of participants to 5. As the leader, Lu Yifan had already chosen the person he wanted to go on stage. However, he was different from the Freedom Envoy Qian Yu. As the captain, Lu Yifan was willing to listen to the opinions of his teammates. After knowing that they didn't need to go on stage. At the same time, Li Nao, Zhang Zihao and the others felt relieved. He was also worried about Lu Yifan, Black and the others. At that moment, Lin Yuan had released the 2 Radiance 100 sequence members in the Treasure Cave Golden Toad. After the 2 of them were summoned out of the Treasure Cave Golden Toad, Lin Yuan's eyes lit up. He glanced at the arena. Then with an excited expression he bowed toward Lin Yuan. After the 2 Radiance 100 sequence members were stuffed into the treasured artifacts made from the treasured cave Golden Toad's skin and stomach pouch, they had already died. Thus he had been worrying about the situation on the field. He was afraid that Black would not be able to fight 1 against 3. Since Black was still alive, it meant that he had won the duel. The 2 Radiance 100 sequence members bowed toward Black to thank him for saving their lives. Lin Yuan thought for a moment and said to Lu Yifan, "Our first request is that no one uses artifacts." Currently, the only artifact that Lin Yuan was familiar with was the Treasure Cave Golden Toad Brocade Pouch, which was useless in battle. The Treasure Cave Golden Toad Brocade Pouch was the only artifact that Lin Yuan was proficient in using, and it was useless in battle. Although Lin Yuan did not know Lu Yifan, he knew Zhongzhe, Lu Jia and Gao Feng. After all, the Radiant Sex Education method was after the Fei system was completely formed. Then, according to the characteristics of the sacred source life form, they would match artifacts. Lu Yifan was the 3rd Radiance Envoy. As the 3rd Radiance Envoy, Lu Yifan definitely had an artifact. He definitely had an artifact. However, with only 1 person using an artifact, he would undoubtedly be at a disadvantage against 5 people using artifacts. Thus, no one used an artifact. Instead, it gave his side the advantage. In the previous duel, Han Qi had used the Class 5 Demon Lizard Fong Blade. His combat strength had increased by at least 20%. Most importantly, the Class 5 Demon Lizard Fong Blade provided Han Qi with an endless supply of energy. If not for the Class 5 Demon Lizard Fong Blade, Han Qi could only rely on the floating earth snake to eat dirt. Chime, which had already transformed, could not hold on any longer. This duel allowed Lin Yuan to deeply understand how helpful a suitable artifact was to a spirit qi professional. Hearing Black's suggestion, Lu Yifan nodded. Then he frowned. Lu Yifan also understood. The Freedom Federation and the Radiance Federation's education methods were different. Restricting artifacts was the most beneficial choice for his side. However, the Freedom Federation would definitely know about it. Then, in such a situation, the Freedom Federation had the right to remove a requirement. It was very likely that they would remove this requirement. After Lu Yifan expressed his thoughts, Yi Shiwen said Lu Jia, Zhongzhe and Gao Feng's expressions turned grave. According to Zhongzhe's personality, he would definitely say, "So what if the opponent has an artifact? Our side is not afraid." However, Zhongzhe knew. This duel was not just about life and death. It was about the Radiance Federation's dignity and glory. However, Zhongzhe thought for a long time and could not think of a solution to the situation that Lu Yifan had mentioned. Previously, Lin Yuan did not understand the rules of the Myriad Nations Conference. He knew that his side could make 3 requests and the opponent could only reject 1. Behind the silver mask, a smile appeared on his face. According to Yin Lin's information, the Freedom Federation's envoy team had a trump card. One of their trump cards was the combination of Yanling Kai Hua and Yu Changjian's sacred source life forms. Gao Feng had the sacred source life form, the music box. That way they would not have to worry about the combination of the 3 sacred source life forms. However, the Freedom Federation's envoy team did not know about this. Compared to artifacts, the combination of 3 sacred source life forms was undoubtedly much stronger. Zhongzhe, Gao Feng and Lu Jia had not participated in the duel. The Freedom Federation did not know much about the 3 of them. Therefore, the Freedom Federation's envoy team could not confirm whether they had a suitable artifact to use. Therefore, their second request was for no one to use a sacred source life form. The Freedom Federation's trump card was restricted. They would definitely not be willing and would not agree. 7017K. Chapter 1726. Therefore, even though he knew that this was a 2-way restriction, he still chose to cross out the second requirement. Lin Yuan voiced out his thoughts. The expressions on Lu Yifan, Zhongzhe, Lu Jia and Gao Feng's faces relaxed at the same time. Lin Yuan had used the sacred source life form to unleash a Myth 3 Fei attack on the Commander Execution platform. However, as long as an offensive sacred source life form was nurtured properly, it would basically have the ability to fight above its rank. Zhongzhe's sacred source life form, the Heaven's Blazing Fire, had already reached 5 stars. Zhongzhe used the sacred source life form's heavenly blaze to open the gates of heaven and summon the flaming angel. The leading archangel had the strength of a Myth 3. Thus, on the side of the Freedom Federation diplomatic mission, he was not afraid of Lin Yuan's sacred source life form. He gave up on denying the second request. In fact, these 2 requests from the Radiance Federation did not need to be restricted anymore. However, since there was such an opportunity, no one would be foolish enough to give it up. In the end, the 5 of them discussed. In order to ensure the safety of Gao Feng, a pure support, each team could choose 1 member. This member could not be attacked before the other 4 members fell to the ground. This kind of request was made in the 10,000 States Conference. The federation that had pure support or healing spirit chi professionals in their team would always mention it. It was not a special request. After Lu Yifan revealed these 3 requests, Feng Qiu's expression changed. The faces of the Freedom Federation's side immediately became very interesting. After witnessing Black's strength, Yu Changjian, who had some complaints about the 2 disciples of His Holiness, could not help but say, "Damn it! The Radiant Sect's 2 requests are obviously restricting our performance. You all saw the Radiance 100 sequence test just now. That youth in white is Cicada Cry's disciple. It's obviously a pure support. The 3rd request has great benefits for the Radiance Federation. Based on the abilities displayed by Cicada Cry's disciple, if we keep the 3rd request, we won't be able to fight a war of attrition with Hui Yao. I might be a support-type spirit chi professional, but I'm more inclined to control and attack. At the same time, Yanling Kai Hua and I will link our sacred source life forms. I don't have to worry about my safety at all." Yu Changjian's complaints could be said to be the thoughts of Yanling and Kai Hua. The 2 of them wanted to agree with Yu Changjian. But when they saw the expression on Qian Yu's face, they shut their mouths. Han Yu glared at Yu Changjian and said, "Yu Changjian, this duel was ordered by His Highness Li Su. Her Holiness the Compassionate Goddess is watching from behind. Are you complaining because you are dissatisfied with His Majesty? In this battle either we win or we die." This is the destiny of the three of you. Rather than complaining here, why don't we think about how we can win this battle? Qian Yu's words were reasonable. It was also a fact. The vague meaning in his words was like a sharp thorn that stabbed into the hearts of Yanling Kaihua and Yu Changjian. Yes. If they lost this battle, the three of them would definitely die. The three of them knew about the relationship between Her Holiness Goddess Lian and Qian Yu. He had no idea why Her Highness the Compassionate Goddess was so protective of Qian Yu. However, the Freedom Federation had previously held a life-and-death battle for the Swamp World's territory. As a freedom envoy, Qian Yu represented his family. However, he was schemed against by a few people from the other party's clan and almost died. In the end, the Pity Goddess appeared and protected Qian Yu. Even for Qian Yu, they did not hesitate to put pressure on the family that had two contemporary Radiant Light Knights. In the Freedom Federation, this matter had once spread among the top families. The goddess of Lian, who was not supposed to be here, had arrived. It was obvious that if Qian Yu was really in a life-threatening situation, the Compassion Goddess would also lend a hand. Since Her Majesty Na had allowed Lu O to come over, she must have given him something to protect his life. Moreover, with the relationship between Her Holiness Goddess of Pity and Her Holiness Na, it would be impossible for her to win. Her Holiness Goddess Pity probably wouldn't mind protecting Lu O. Then he would go to Her Highness Na to exchange for a large number of fairy source-type life forms. This was also the reason why Qian Yu stood out in this life-and-death battle between the five of them. He only said that the fate of the three of them was victory or death. At this moment, Yanling Kaihua and Yu Changjian. He could not help but feel a sense of sorrow in his heart. However, this mournful emotion only appeared for a moment before it turned into a strong desire to fight. The three of them were not sure why Qian Yu and Luo had been chosen by Her Holiness Goddess Pity and Her Highness Na. However, the other Freedom Envoys and the current Freedom Knights had been chosen by Her Holiness. It was all because they had unparalleled potential. They had also proven themselves through certain things. This team battle with the Radiance Federation was now. It was the best opportunity for them to prove themselves. If they seized this opportunity and used the Sacred Source Life Form's linkage ability, which could not be replaced by others. Basically, it was a done deal to become the next Freedom Envoy. At the very least, they could be ranked among the Freedom Knights. Moreover, if the three of them performed outstandingly, after returning to the Freedom Federation, they might have a chance to be accepted by Her Holiness as a disciple. Kaihua, who had this thought, suddenly felt that his fear of Qian Yu had disappeared. Kaihua looked straight at Qian Yu and said, "In this battle, the three of us will naturally use our full strength, even if we have to use that move. But before we go on stage, I hope that Lord Qian Yu can guarantee. Show all your trump cards even if they will damage your potential." Qian Yu could not help but be furious. What was Kaihua talking about? Her Holiness Goddess Pity and Her Holiness Li Su were watching from behind. In the middle of a battle, how could he possibly hide anything? If Kaihua's words were to be heard by the Freedom Federation's families and Her Holiness. If the Freedom Federation's families and Her Holiness heard this, what would he become? Especially his family, which was on bad terms with several other families. If those families heard this, they would definitely use this as an excuse. Qian Yu coldly said to Kaihua. "Kaihua, be clear about your position. What right do you have to speak to me like this? As a Freedom Envoy, what do I need to guarantee you?" After saying that, Qian Yu coldly glanced at Yanling and Yu Changjian. He then spoke to Lu Yifan in a clear voice. "The Freedom Federation has chosen to invalidate the Radiance Federation's second request. Both sides can use the Sacred Source Life Form." Qian Yu's words made Lu Yifan, Lin Yuan, Zhong Zhe, Gaofeng and Lu Jie completely relax. Lu Jie placed his hand on his chest. In this battle, Lu Jie clearly stated that his duty was to protect. In order to protect Lin Yuan no matter the price. His Sacred Source Life Form should also be humming. He just hoped that after he used it, Lin Yuan would not blame him. 7017K. Chapter 1727. Lu Jie had risked his life for Lin Yuan once before. That time, the two of them had been sucked into the upgraded Class 3 Water World Dimensional Rift. That was when the two of them were facing a strong enemy alone. This time it was a 5-on-5 team battle. However, Lu Jie's thoughts were the same. As Lu Jie's strength grew, he was also able to control the situation on the battlefield. If there was an attack that was about to hit Lin Yuan, Lu Jie hoped that if he used his body to block in front of Lin Yuan, he could stop the attack from hitting him. He did not want to hurt Lin Yuan through his body. Qian Yu crossed out his side's second request. Therefore the first and third requests were in effect. Both sides could not use artifacts during the battle. Furthermore, he chose one person in the team. Before the other four were defeated, this person could not be attacked. Lu Yifan replied. Since our side has made a request, your side has also used its authority to remove one request. According to the 10,000 Nations Conference's team battle rules, both sides have half an hour to prepare. Once this half an hour is over, both sides will be teleported to a random location on each side. After saying that, Lu Yifan led the team to a building not far away. This building was the place where the two sides held a battle meeting before the battle. The spacetime elder took out two shell-like objects. He handed them to the spacetime attendant behind him. The spacetime attendant took the two ethereal mother shellfish fragments that had been marked in advance and brought them in front of the Freedom Envoy, Qian Yu. The spacetime attendant said, "These two shellfish fragments have been marked in advance and are one-time items for group teleportation. After using them, they can be teleported to a pre-marked location in the battle venue. To be fair, the Freedom Federation will choose first." Qian Yu took one of the shellfish. The Radiance Federation could not fake this kind of matter. Moreover, the terrain often only affected spirit chi professionals in one-on-one duels. In the team battle, everyone's phase and sacred source life forms were different. There was a huge difference in the reliance on the terrain. The terrain that might be beneficial to one of the teammates might be disadvantageous to the other. The spacetime attendant asked Qian Yu to take one of the shellfish fragments. He sent the other shell fragment to Lin Yuan and the others, who had already arrived in the conference room. On the Freedom Federation's side, Qian Yu didn't immediately lead his team to the conference room to discuss countermeasures. Kai Hua was hoping that Qian Yu could swear. This was because Kai Hua had already made up his mind to fight for his life. Before going all out, Kai Hua wanted his teammates to give him a guarantee and confidence. That was all. Qian Yu was right. Yan Ling, Kai Hua, and Yu Changjian's backers were still a little weak. Unlike Qian Yu and Lu O, who were confident that Her Holiness would stand up for them in this confrontation between the two great federations, Kai Hua didn't have any malicious intent, but he was reprimanded by Qian Yu so harshly. He had no intention of making any promises to Kai Hua, Yan Ling, and Yu Changjian. Even if Yan Ling had always respected Qian Yu, the way she looked at Qian Yu couldn't help but change. Especially Qian Yu's words. "I am the envoy of freedom. What do I need to promise you?" Although Qian Yu was talking about Kai Hua, he was also talking about Yan Ling and Yu Changjian. Yan Ling said in a low voice, "I am the one favored by the three Her Holiness. I am currently the one favored by the most Her Holiness among the younger generation of the Freedom Federation. Sir Envoy, before we fight for our lives, I think you need to give us a guarantee. Putting Kai Hua and Yu Changjian aside, even if my sacred source life form doesn't link with them, I will still be able to defeat them. With the uniqueness of my main life form, I can still rank in the top 10 among the younger generation. Sir Envoy, I, Yan Ling, want a guarantee from you." Yan Ling had originally spoken up for Kai Hua and Yu Changjian. If Kai Hua hadn't been rebuked by Qian Yu, perhaps Yan Ling wouldn't have said that. Yan Ling knew very well that if she said that, she would offend Qian Yu. Offending the current envoy of freedom wouldn't do her any good in the future. Yan Ling felt that she was a good friend to this small team, but her words were always hurtful. She had always said whatever she wanted to say without thinking about others. Kai Hua, Yu Changjian, and Yan Ling were a team. Because Yan Ling was a girl and the three of them worked together, Yan Ling's sacred source life form was in the dominant position. Hence the two of them had tolerated Yan Ling. In fact, they had long been dissatisfied. Yan Ling's words were meant to elevate her position. She wanted Qian Yu to give her face and make a promise. However, Yan Ling's words had pushed Kai Hua and Yu Changjian aside. She had placed herself above Kai Hua and Yu Changjian. The way Kai Hua and Yu Changjian looked at Yan Ling had completely changed. Yan Ling had relied on her own strength. Without the two of them, how could she have obtained the three majesties' favor? Kai Hua and Yu Changjian both felt that the two of them were helping Yan Ling. Yan Ling looked at Qian Yu. She didn't know that Kai Hua and Yu Changjian's gazes had changed. Just as Yan Ling thought that Qian Yu would give her face, Qian Yu looked at her coldly and maliciously as he enunciated each word. "Yan Ling, in my eyes, what difference is there between you and a clown? You were born into a mid-tier family established by a branch of the Yan family, one of the 16 big families. You were originally not worthy of the surname Yan. Because you have some talent, you were given the surname. I, Qian Yu, was born into the Qian family and am the young master of the Qian family. In terms of background, you are not worthy of being mentioned in the same breath as me. In terms of talent, you are better than me? Without Kai Hua and Yu Changjian, how much higher can your position be compared to Han Qi? No matter how many majesties you have, none of them will accept you as a disciple. Kai Hua is not worthy of speaking to me like that. Do you think you are? Under normal circumstances, when Qian Yu was in a good mood. Now that Yan Ling had said these words, Qian Yu might really give her face. This was because Qian Yu had decided to bet his life on this battle. Otherwise, if he really lost, even if the goddess of compassion intervened and saved his life, if he returned to the Freedom Federation, not only would he no longer be worthy of being a freedom envoy, he would also bring shame to the Qian family. Qian Yu could still vividly remember the fate of his brother who had brought shame to the Qian family. Hence, when Qian Yu heard Kai Hua's words, he was so furious. Qian Yu forcefully suppressed his anger, but Yan Ling came at this moment. Qian Yu could no longer suppress his anger, and it poured out crazily towards Yan Ling 7017K. Chapter 1728. Previously, Qian Yu had treated Kai Hua to remind him of his status. So now what Qian Yu said to Yan Ling was basically equivalent to a personal attack. Her family background had always been Yan Ling's sore spot. Because of this background, Yan Ling's heart was extremely inferiority complex and sensitive. That was why it was hard to empathize with others. She was sarcastic and arrogant and always hurt others. Yan Ling originally thought that she was favored by the three majesties. No one would mention his origin anymore. But now Qian Yu had brought it up. It was equivalent to a blow that shattered Yan Ling's heart, causing her to lower her head. Yan Ling could not help but stab Qian Yu with 100 knives in her heart. As an A-rank spirit chi professional, Qian Yu already had the ability to produce a spirit chi shield to block the sound. Thus, the viewers on the internet didn't know about the Freedom Federation's diplomatic mission and didn't go to the conference room for a meeting. Why are you still standing here? The upcoming battle was related to the Radiance Federation's glory. This caused the Star Web, which was supposed to be in an uproar because of the battle between Black and Han Qi, to be in an uproar, suppressing his boiling passion. Everyone was looking forward to cheering together after they won the team battle. Of course, if they lost the team battle, there would be no need to cheer. This was because of Hei's outstanding performance in the general slaying battle. Lu Shuang and Poison Beauty's live-streaming rooms returned to the first and second most popular spots, just like before the Radiance 100 sequence had started. In the past, Poison Beauty's live-streaming style had never been serious. But this time, Poison Beauty's expression turned serious. He clasped his hands together and said seriously, "You all know about my main Fei. I'm too weak to make any useful combat analysis. Everyone, why don't you pray for the next team battle with me? Believe in these 5 Radiance heroes, believe in Black, believe in Lord Radiance envoys. Lu Jie Zhongzhe Lord Gao Feng." Poison Beauty's words resonated widely in the live streaming room. To these ordinary people, they could not participate in the battle for the Radiance Federation's dignity. However, praying and cheering were also ways to participate in this battle. In fact, these people had indeed joined the battle. Their prayers for Lin Yuan turned into golden spots of light. It appeared in the shrine in the depths of his soul. Previously, the shrine in the depths of Lin Yuan's soul had countless golden spots of light like stars. He could draw on the power of faith in these light spots at any time. But now, due to the increase in the number of light spots, Lin Yuan suddenly realized that the shrine in the depths of his soul had actually changed. These star-like spots of light formed a nebula. It surrounded Lin Yuan's will. As these nebulas circulated, he felt as if his soul was going to undergo some kind of change. However, it seemed that there was still a long way to go before it could truly change. Since Bai Lan had formed a contract with Lin Yuan, her bloodline had been purified multiple times. The immense power of faith and pure water elemental energy could strengthen Azure's bloodline. Lin Yuan had already fed Bai Lan the water elemental energy extracted from the elemental well. The purest water elemental energy in the world was absorbed by Bai Lan. Bai Lan's body showed some obvious changes. Originally, Blue had gained sentience in the water through an exclusive skill. After Bai Lan gained sentience, it continued to purify its bloodline. Lin Yuan noticed that Blue's sentience had transformed and was heading toward the merfolk. This was also the reason why Lin Yuan would transform into a merfolk form when he fused with Bai Lan. Now Bai Lan's body was being nourished by this pure water elemental energy. It gave birth to an extremely noble bloodline aura. This bloodline aura made Lin Yuan feel that it had a trace of an apostle's aura. However, it also seemed to be more mysterious and profound than an apostle's aura. Lin Yuan could not figure it out for a while, so he did not think about it anymore. Lin Yuan felt that if he fused with Bai Lan, this noble bloodline that was born in Bai Lan's body should also fall on him. Lin Yuan felt that after fusing with Bai Lan, his form should undergo a huge change. When Poison Beauty led everyone to pray, she did not know that her actions would be of such great help to Lin Yuan. However, in the process of praying, it was just like what Poison Beauty said in the live streaming room. She had unknowingly ranked Black ahead of the Radiance Envoy and Lu Yifan. Perhaps it was because Black had created too many miracles. Poison Beauty believed that Black would definitely be able to continue creating miracles. Suddenly, Poison Beauty had an idea in her mind. After becoming a Radiance 100 sequence member, Black still didn't have a title. Poison Beauty suddenly felt that the title, Silver Masked Miracle, was very suitable for Black. Regardless of whether there will be a day when Black takes off his mask. However, that silver mask had ignited the passion of too many people. It also brought too many surprises to many people. Let too many people know that miracles really could happen. On Poison Beauty's side, due to the limitations of her personal abilities, she was unable to effectively analyze the battle situation. But Lu Shuang was different. After all, Lu Shuang was a peak king-level expert, and she had already grasped the opportunity to become an emperor-level expert. Therefore, with Lu Shuang's strength, he was qualified to analyze and explain the battle between the Freedom Federation and the Radiance Federation's younger generation. In the previous battle between Black and Han Qi, Lu Shuang had been commentating the entire process. This allowed many ordinary people to see the situation of the battle clearly. At the very least, he wouldn't go so far as to watch the show in confusion. The bullet screen in the live streaming channel was urging Lu Shuang to analyze the upcoming battle. Lu Shuang pondered for a moment and said, "It's very easy for star web streamers to casually analyze a battle situation. But I don't understand the situation of the Freedom Federation's envoys. I also don't know the trump cards of our Radiance Federation's lords. This battle is a battle where the 5 lords are betting their lives. I don't want to exaggerate our side too much. If the 5 lords win, it will seem like this battle is too easy. Brothers, they are really betting their lives in this battle. I will commentate during the battle later. But I'm not a creation master, and the sacred source lifeforms involved in this battle are already beyond the scope of my knowledge." Lu Shuang usually spoke straightforwardly during her live streaming. But at this moment, every word that Lu Shuang said was said after deliberating for a long time. Lu Shuang could be responsible for every word that she said. Lu O watched as Qian Yu, Yanling, Kai Hua, and Yu Longsword were in a stalemate. He couldn't help but reach out and grab the white hair on the top of his head. Then he spoke. "Big brother Qian Yu, in order to let the 3 of them feel at ease, please make a guarantee." Just as he finished speaking to Qian Yu, Lu O raised his hand and said, "I, Lu O, will bet my life in this battle. In this battle, I, Lu O, will stake my life on the line. I won't be stingy with anything I can do, including the greater devil within me." 7017K. Chapter 1729. After saying that, Lu O stretched out his hand and placed it on his chest. Lu O had always been expressionless. His solemn and firm guarantee immediately warmed the hearts of Yanling, Kai Hua, and Yu Changjian. According to Qian Yu's previous relationship with Yu Changjian, Kai Hua, and Yanling, Kai Hua, Yu Changjian, and Yanling would find it hard to work together with Qian Yu in the upcoming battle. Yanling's words had even caused a rift to appear between her, Kai Hua, and Yu Changjian. However, Lu O was Na Na's disciple. He had set an example with such a high status and assured them. This had allowed Yanling, Kai Hua, and Yu Changjian to let go of the grudge in their hearts. Even if there were still cracks in their relationship, they had to give it their all in this competition. Otherwise, there would be no chance of survival. Qian Yu had already been blown up by Yanling's words and lost his composure in anger. When he first heard Luo's words, Qian Yu thought that Luo was targeting him. As the current Liberty Envoy and the leader of the Freedom Federation's envoys, when had he become so insignificant? You Luo are Na Na's disciple. I, Qianyu, am Lady Compassion Goddess's only caretaker. Apart from me, Lady Compassion Goddess doesn't care about anyone else. Therefore, after Qianyu became the Liberty Envoy, he had always been regarded as Her Holiness Goddess's disciple. Qianyu wanted to reprimand Luo. However, after seeing Luo personally raise his hand to swear, Qianyu felt a lot more comfortable. He knew that Luo had done this to suppress the dispute on his side. He had to go and prepare for the upcoming team battle. There was only half an hour left for the pre-battle meeting. However, the stalemate had already lasted for almost 15 minutes. Qianyu found that Her Holiness Goddess and Li Su behind him were looking at him with probing gazes. Qianyu immediately knew that if he did not take any action, even if Her Highness the Compassionate Goddess did not say much, Her Highness Li Su would definitely flip out. His Holiness Li Su had a special purpose for this envoy mission to the Radiance Federation. If his side could not win this battle, Li Su's purpose would not be able to be officially implemented. For this goal, Li Su did not hesitate to cooperate with Pagoda Cannon. It was said that he paid a huge price. If something went wrong, even if Her Holiness Goddess Lian protected him, he would not be able to escape. Once he returned to the Freedom Federation, his days would definitely not be easy. With this thought in mind, Qianyu raised his hand and said to Yanling Kaihua and Yu Chongjian, "As a Freedom Envoy, I, Qianyu, must set an example. In this battle, even if I become a cripple, I will still go all out. If Luo uses a greater devil, I can also use my sacred source life form Hidden Sea Muse. You know the price I have to pay to use the sacred source life form Hidden Sea Muse. Every time I fuse with the Hidden Sea Songstress, the mermaid royal bloodline in her body will be consumed. It will take a long time for her to recover. I think I have shown my sincerity by saying so. According to a spirit chi professional's common sense, Emperor-class experts would activate their spiritual power shields. Even a powerhouse with an eternal spirit item would not be able to hear the content of the conversation within the spiritual energy shield." Li Su was indeed looking at Qianyu and the others with a puzzled expression. She did not know what Qianyu and the others were talking about. From the looks of it, there seemed to be a conflict. Could it be that they were discussing the battle strategy later? The pitiful goddess looked at Qianyu with a cold gaze. Her eyes were filled with dense killing intent. It was as if Qianyu, the Freedom Envoy, was not her favored one. Qianyu did not know that after an expert awakened their birth providence, if they were fortunate enough to step on the path to heaven, they could call themselves gods. Their spiritual energy would undergo a metamorphosis. The pitiful goddess called this spiritual energy divine sense. Through divine sense, the pitiful goddess could pass through the spirit chi professionals' spiritual power shields and hear the conversation of the spirit chi professionals within the spiritual power shields. This situation was known to the Freedom Federation's three Her Eminences, who were qualified to call themselves gods. However, they did not tell the other eminences. Therefore, Li Su, who was standing at the side, did not know that the pitiful goddess had just calmly listened to the drama and was indifferent. It was as if the people who were about to compete were not the Freedom Federation's envoys. It was as if the glory of the Freedom Federation had nothing to do with the pitiful goddess. Not only did she not step forward to stop them, but she even felt that Luo had stepped forward to end this conflict. It had affected her mood to watch the show. Only when Qianyu said that he wanted to use the sacred source life form Hidden Sea Songstress and fuse with her, the pitiful goddess's expression could not help but change in that instant. The pitiful goddess favored Qianyu because Qianyu's sacred source life form Hidden Sea Songstress had the mermaid bloodline. The pitiful goddess had spent a lot of effort over the years. That was why Qianyu's sacred source life form Hidden Sea Songstress mermaid bloodline had evolved into the mermaid royal bloodline. But now, Qianyu had not hesitated to use the sacred source life form's mermaid royal bloodline. Once the Hidden Sea Songstress mermaid royal bloodline was used up, for a long time, Qianyu would need to restore the sacred source life form's mermaid royal bloodline. It would no longer allow the bloodline to advance. This was equivalent to pushing back the pitiful goddess's hopes for a period of time. In the end, the pitiful goddess did not react. She only looked at Qianyu with an exceptionally cold gaze. It was like a lion looking at a disobedient little wildebeest that it had reared for a long time. The pitiful goddess was the Freedom Federation's majesty. Stopping Qianyu from using the sacred source lifeform's Hidden Sea Songstress bloodline was equivalent to going against the Freedom Federation's interests. Secondly, the pitiful goddess did not want her secret to be known by the Freedom Federation. The Moon Empress should have crossed that line as well. Otherwise she would not have been able to take out a pure eternal heart. Therefore the Moon Empress must have heard what Qianyu had said. It was fine if the Freedom Federation's Majesty and the Pagoda Canon knew. If his weakness was in the Radiance Federation's hands, the Radiance Federation wouldn't be able to control it. Qianyu would not be able to take her away no matter what. The pitiful goddess's expression changed in a flash. It was very easy for an expert who had embarked on the path of ascension to conceal their emotions. Therefore in the war conference room, Qianyu, who was hosting the meeting, did not know that he had unknowingly angered the pitiful goddess. There was nothing much to say in 15 minutes. Not to mention that Qianyu could not tell Kai Hua Yanling and Yu Changjian all his trump cards. Even Lu O, who had spoken up to stop the conflict, could not do it. Although Yanling, Kai Hua, and Yu Changjian usually worked together. However, the three of them all hid some of their trump cards. Therefore the entire war conference was held. It was basically no different from not having been held. 7017K. Chapter 1730. In fact, Yanling, Kai Hua, and Yu Changjian all felt that they had a greater supporting role in the team. They hoped to be the one who could not be attacked by the other party as per Hui Yao's third request. Yanling's words were the most direct. Kai Hua, Yu Changjian, I've always been the leader of the three of us. Just based on this point I should occupy this seat. Kai Hua said unhappily. Yanling, in terms of team support I'm slightly stronger than you. Moreover, Ajian is the true support type spirit chi professional among the three of us. Even if I don't fight for this position, Ajian is more suitable than you. Kai Hua knew very well that if he really fought for it he would not be able to beat Yu Changjian. Yanling also had an advantage over him. It was better for him to withdraw and help Yu Changjian fight for an opportunity. This way he would be doing Yu Changjian a favor. Compared to interacting with Yanling, Kai Hua was indeed more comfortable interacting with Yu Changjian. Moreover, Yanling's method of excluding the two of them. Even now Kai Hua was still fussing over it. The dispute that had been suppressed by Luo had formed a rift. The fight for benefits was once again stirred up. Luo was not good at expressing her emotions and was on good terms with Han Qi. Han Qi's death had already made Luo extremely angry. Luo disliked Yanling, Kai Hua, and Yu Changjian for a long time. Luo treated Han Qi as a friend. However, Yanling, Kai Hua, and Yu Changjian had always been excluding and ridiculing Han Qi. At this juncture there was another quarrel. Luo's eyes suddenly turned red. They were as red as thick blood plasma. Scarlet ghost patterns faintly appeared on Luo's cheeks. At this moment even his hair was dyed with a thick layer of dark red that could not be dispelled. Luo's originally clear voice was filled with endless depravity and evil. The three of you shut up. Otherwise the three of you won't have to fight later. I'll eat the three of you and I can borrow your abilities for one day. It's enough for this duel. Also I'm very hungry. While speaking, Luo stuck out her tongue that was 100 times redder than a normal person and licked her lips. She glanced at Qianyu beside her. As a freedom envoy, Qianyu couldn't help but feel a chill down his spine. The way Luo looked at him was like a person who had starved for a week and smelled the aroma of meat. The ghost tattoo on Luo's face had already spread to her cheeks. This meant that Luo's contracted Great Devil bloodline had reached that level. Presumably, Her Highness Na should have given Luo the seed of Satan condensed by her Great Devil. Furthermore, Luo had even refined the seed of Satan. Otherwise, Luo's ghost tattoo wouldn't have reached such a level. Thinking of this, Qianyu's gaze was half fearful and half admiring. Even if Her Holiness the Compassionate Goddess treated him, she wouldn't be able to reach half of what Her Holiness Na treated Luo. Her Holiness the Pitiful Goddess also had one of the 7 great devils. The pitiful His Holiness had never said that he would condense the seed of Satan for him. He had only given her a devil seed produced from a middle-rank devil's body. This caused Qianyu to have some complaints in his heart. He had yet to refine the seed of Satan. A devil could only devour one seed of Satan in its lifetime. Qianyu felt that he should wait a little longer. Maybe Her Holiness the Compassionate Goddess would give him the seed of Satan produced by the great demon. Qianyu felt that apart from himself, Her Holiness the Goddess of Pity's attitude towards the younger generation was the only one. There was no way he would leave the seed of Satan to someone else. Luo's words and the aura he released. Yanling Kaihua and Yu Changjian immediately became obedient. His body trembled uncontrollably. At this moment the ghost tattoo on Luo's face faded, and his expression returned to that of acute Shota. He said, "Leave that spot for Yu Changjian. A support class spirit chi professional that isn't adept at defense wouldn't have survived if he wasn't in this position. A spirit chi professional that is adept at support will be able to display the greatest effect in this position. Yanling, as a power offense class spirit chi professional, just do your job well." Speaking up to here, Luo turned to look at Qianyu. "Big brother Qianyu, there are still 5 minutes left. You're the captain, so you make the arrangements. I will do my best to obey your arrangements." Qianyu blinked his eyes. "Arrangements? You've arranged everything that needs to be arranged. What else do I have to arrange?" Qianyu could not help but sigh in his heart. It would be great if the Freedom Federation's Freedom Envoys had the same status as the Radiance Federation's Radiance Envoys. When the Radiance Federation's Her Holiness disciples saw the Radiance Envoys, they would normally address them as Lord. However, the Freedom Federation's Freedom Envoys had to face the Her Holiness disciples who were truly chosen by Her Holiness. Even if they did not have to lower their heads in greeting, they would still have to lower their heads when they had to fight. In the Radiance Federation's combat conference room, Lu Yifan, who was a Radiance envoy, recalled what he had said to him. He immediately asked, "You guys should have an understanding of each other's strength, right? I've heard about it from little he. We only have half an hour, which is very short. There definitely isn't enough time for me to understand your phase and sacred source life forms. Why don't you understand my main phase, the desolate bloodline Fei, and the sacred source life form?" Lu Yifan waved his hand. He was the first to summon his desolate bloodline Fei. Lin Yuan, Lu Jia, Zhongzhe and Gao Feng did not expect Lu Yifan to be so frank. He had revealed all his trump cards in front of them. Lin Yuan had heard from he before. His senior brother was an extremely special defense-type spirit chi professional. At that time, Lin Yuan did not know that his senior brother was the Radiance envoy Lu Yifan, who was ranked 3rd. It was only after hearing from Zhongzhe that Lin Yuan learned that the Radiance envoy Lu Yifan, who was ranked 3rd, was his senior brother. The moment Lu Yifan waved his hand, Lin Yuan suddenly felt as though a huge mountain had appeared in front of him. The layers of mountains gave off a feeling of desolation. In this stretch of mountains there were many green peach trees. From time to time, green flowers would fall from the peach trees. On the tallest peach tree in the mountains, a green bird that was only half the size of a human was perched. This green bird had a white crane body and eagle feathers on its head. Its green tail feathers were not as gorgeous as a phoenix's, but there were 33 of them wantonly floating behind it. Lin Yuan could be sure that the scene in front of him was not an illusory skill. Instead, it was a manifestation of an aura. At that moment, Zhongzhe could not help but exclaim, "Big brother Yifan's desolate bloodline Fei has actually reached that level." Chapter 1731. The desolate mystic realm's bloodline of desolation Feis were the same as the devil cathedrals. They all had extremely strong bloodline distinctions. The devils produced by the devil church were divided into low-rank devils, middle-rank devils and high-rank devils. In other words, the so-called 7 great devils. Through proper nurturing, lesser devils had the chance to become intermediate devils. Lesser devils, on the other hand, had very little chance of evolving into greater devils. Of course, this was not absolute. After all, in the history of the Freedom Federation, there had been such a precedent. Among the bloodlines of the desolate bloodline phase, those that were labeled as inferior devils were Feis with the fake desolate bloodline. A Fei with a fake desolate bloodline would only have a trace of a weak desolate bloodline. It wasn't much different from a Fei. However, a Fei with a fake desolate bloodline had to be nurtured. As long as one could find a way to stimulate a desolate Fei's bloodline, they would be able to kill it. In that case, a fake desolate bloodline Fei targeting a low-class devil could easily evolve into a true desolate bloodline Fei targeting a middle-class devil. True wilderness bloodline spiritual objects had already reached a threshold. For example, Zhongzhe and Lin Yuan's heaven-burning Ho and Golden Wings were true wilderness bloodline Feis. This kind of spiritual object that was born with the bloodline of the true wilderness would have a high chance of reaching the realm of the great wilderness through bloodline enhancement after birth. In the Radiance Federation's desolate mystic realm, there had never been a Fei that was born with a great desolate bloodline. As a result, It seemed that they were a bit weaker than the Freedom Federation's Devil Church. But in reality that was not the case. In the history of the Freedom Federation, there had only been 2 or 3 cases of a middle-rank devil transforming into a greater devil. However, in the Radiance Federation, everyone's desolate bloodline phase had reached the realm of the Great Desolate. When summoned, the corresponding image of desolation would appear. The image of desolation was the symbol of a spiritual object with the Great Wilderness bloodline. The Freedom Federation's overall strength had always been stronger than the Radiance Federation. However, he had always been rather fearful of the Radiance Federation. It was inseparable from these Great Desolate bloodline phase. After all, a Great Desolate bloodline fae was qualified to target a favored spirit. The Moon Empress was the only exception. She had used some unknown method to obtain the loyalty of the Weeping Holy Moon Beast, the chosen spirit. Each of the Radiance Federation's majesties was equivalent to having a favored spirit. This was the reason why the Freedom Federation didn't dare to take the initiative to attack the Radiance Federation. Now this reason should have been broken. That was because the Freedom Federation was about to have a 4th person, someone who was qualified to call himself a god. On the Radiance Federation's side, the Moon Empress was an exception. This caused the Freedom Federation and the Radiance Federation to once again enter a stalemate. The cyan bird that looked like a crane or a phoenix landed on Lu Yifun's shoulder. Lu Yifun said with a smile. Little Zay is right. My desolate bloodline fae, the peach sky azure bird, has indeed reached the level of the Great Desolate. However, the heavenly peach blue bird only stepped into the Great Wilderness a month ago. Thus, the image of famine looks relatively simple. Lu Yifun paused for a moment. He continued. When you become Radiance envoys, you will be qualified to enter the desolate arcane realm for seclusion. Only there can desolate bloodline spiritual items transform from the true desolate realm to the Great Desolate realm. The aura of desolation there is not present in the outside world. Zhongzhe nodded. His desolate bloodline fae, Burning Sky Ho, had absorbed the heavenly maiden grade elemental pearl. However, Zhongzhe did not realize that his Burning Sky Ho's bloodline was improving from the true desolate realm. Zhongzhe did not have time to ask his master Bamboo Monarch. Now Zhongzhe understood what was going on. Lu Yifun introduced his desolate bloodline fae, the peach sky azure bird, without holding back. He used Morbius ability True Data to check on the peach sky azure bird. Fae name, peach sky azure bird, Fae species, blue bird main species / desolate species, Fae grade, suzerain 10 out of 10, Fae type, wood / soul, Fae quality. Myth I abilities frowny face falling flowers. The summoned green peach tree will drop flowers. When each petal lands on the target, it will form a flower shield. When the shield reaches 3 layers, it will turn into a flower battle dress. When the shield reaches 10 layers, it will turn into a small peach sky azure bird that will protect the target. Heartless. When the peach sky azure bird mercilessly treats a target, the flower shield flower battle dress, and the small peach sky azure bird will leave the target. At the same time, the shield's defensive ability will be converted into healing energy and transferred into the target's body. Immerse. The peach sky azure bird will treat its own target with affection. The flower shield flower battle dress, and the small peach sky azure bird will enter a state of yearning for the target. After being shattered, the shattered shield's energy will be converted into spiritual power and injected into the target's body. Green Peach Demon. A young lady wearing a flower battle dress will appear under the summoned green peach tree. This young lady can use the spreading peach roots to restrain the target. The peach roots have a certain strangulation effect. Jade Biting Food. The peach sky azure bird will throw the jade-like peach fruit on the green peach tree at the target. The peach fruit will instantly apply an invincibility effect on the target. As long as the target's strength does not exceed the peach sky azure bird by a large level, this invincibility effect will not be nullified. Protection of the Ocean. When faced with water element energy, the user has the ability to instantly calm the water element energy and return the damage to the target during a water element attack. Return of the Elite Guard. When devouring the soul of the Elite Guard with the Desolation bloodline, it can awaken a drowned Elite Guard in the water region. After the Elite Guard reappears, it will constantly release the Flame Emperor's intent ability. Exclusive skill Frowny Face Heavenly Peach Branch. When the green peach tree is attacked, It will rapidly grow new branches, and each new branch will bloom a peach blossom. Before the newly grown peach branches bear peach fruits, the peach branch's defense will be doubled. Green Peach Gift. Each peach fruit will contribute the energy contained within and give it to the peach sky azure bird. At the same time, the peach sky azure bird can freely distribute this energy to each of the small peach sky azure bird's bodies. Body for Martial. The peach sky azure bird will select a target and analyze the target's characteristics to find the target's weakness. It will then transform the target's weakness into a weapon to make up for the target's weakness and provide assistance to the target. At the same time, it will provide its own ability to the target. After checking, Lin Yuan was shocked by the power of Lu Yifan's Desolation Bloodline Peach Sky Azure Bird. On the other hand, he found a very interesting point. The Peach Sky Azure Bird was in the process of metamorphosis with Chimey. The Flowing Cloud Azure Bird's name was very similar. However, when Lin Yuan observed the phase species, he immediately found a difference. 7017K.